Abertawe. Mae'n bleser gennych gadeirio o'r cyfarfod. Croeso cynnes I chi gyd a croeso arbennig I Andrew Griffiths, Pat Dunmore, Carl Galvin, Joanne Fowler and Emma. So, morning everyone. Dan Williams, Chair of the Board of Swansea Bay University Health Board. Warm welcome to everyone, particularly warm welcome to Andrew Griffiths, with us today for the first time as the new independent member for Data and Digital, to Pat Dunmore, who's attending with us as the chair nominee for our stakeholder reference group. Croeso mawr, Pat. And we do have with us from Morriston Emergency Department, who we're very pleased to welcome, Charlotte Galvin, the Facilitation Officer and Staff Nurse, Joanne Fowler, Staff Nurse, and Emily, Interim Nurse. Delighted that you could join us this morning, and we'll be with you very shortly. So the board, as we know, is a strategic population health body, and we have a statutory duty around health protection and public health. And we continue to be in the winter season, and the Chief Executive's report today highlights again the importance of increasing vaccination uptake. Because, as I've said previously, vaccination and immunisation saves lives, and it's one of the most cost-effective ways of preventing many diseases. So the board has to be both future-focused and grounded in the here and now of day-to-day service delivery. Looking to the future, the board sets strategic direction. And at today's meeting, we're going to hear about the start of the work on the Women's Health Plan, following the national launch in December. We're also going to be considering progress in delivery against our estate strategy. And that's an area of work that will assume even greater importance in the forthcoming 25 to 28 integrated medium-term planning round and beyond. And we're also going to have a look forward to the March board meeting, when we'll take our digital transformation strategy, which again is a vital part of our strategic jigsaw. The board also has to build and sustain strategic partnerships, and there are a number of references throughout today's agenda to our partnership working, including the terms of reference for our newly established joint collaborative committee with Hywel Dda University Health Board. And then to our east, there's an update on our work with Cardiff and Vale University Health Board through our regional and specialist services provider partnership. And then, of course, we are referencing an internal review of partnership governance. And then again, at our March board, we'll be bringing a paper setting out a proposed change to the way in which the board discharged its strategic partnership role. So the board and its committees have a key role in scrutinising delivery against our annual plan. And as always, this section of the agenda has a number of significant papers and the challenges facing us, including our financial challenges, with the range of actions that we have in place to manage our required year-end position. And as we're into the last quarter of 24-25, we are paying particular attention, of course, to delivery against both planned care and urgent and emergency care. Now, we're continuing to do really, really well against waiting times reduction, and we know that the board will want to thank all staff involved in making this excellent progress, as we will want to thank all staff delivering unscheduled and emergency care services that we're going to hear more about, who go the extra mile every day against unrelenting pressure. And that's why we have our staff story and our colleagues with us. The board always has a focus on quality and safety, and that features prominently. And we are looking at a report on the Wales Fertility Institute today. And as ever, we're looking at maternity and neonatal services. And later today, we will be welcoming Denise Schaffer and Ken Sutton from the oversight panel of the independent review. And we're also going to look at the Charter for Families Bereaved through public tragedy. We spend £1.6 billion of public money, as we know, so we have to ensure good governance in all its forms. We always have a robust section on governance, and today's no exception. and particularly as we continue to enhance the report from our committee chairs, because our committees do much of the heavy lifting for the board. And then finally, the board, working with staff and with partners, has to respect the tone and culture for the organisation. We want staff to be able to come to work, to be their best selves, and we want patients to know that there will be no disadvantage or discrimination of any kind when they actually use our service. So that's just a quick run through of some of the items on today's agenda, which will be hugely significant, as I said. So if we turn to that agenda now, we now at our agenda. So apologies then from Deb, and Craig Wilson is here on behalf of Deb Lewis. And we now also have apologies from Keith Lloyd and Judith Winston. So I don't think anybody else has apologised, Claire. Okay. So at that point then, may I ask Abby to take us through the Chief Executive's report on the basis that no one has declared any interest. Nuria, interest?
It's in my declaration of interest form, but Abby's report doesn't refer to a report from Audit Wales. My partner was the lead responsible for the Audit Wales report on cancer services.
And so we're not discussing that report today. Nuria, we'll come back to a fuller report in March. But if we flag your interest now, then we can also flag up ready for March that you won't take part in that discussion when we get to it. But Abby's only referencing it today. Thank you, Nuria. Abby, shall I hand over to you?
Yeah, thank you. As colleagues will be aware, the intention is to use my report to draw attention to some of the key things that we're focused on as an organisation, and to bring to your attention things that we're going to come back and have a more thorough look at as part of our work programme. So you'll see that reference in a couple of areas. I guess to tell you if this is quite interesting, I'm at the 3-month mark this week, I think it is, in terms of time in the organisation. And just to reiterate the thanks I gave last time, I've had a really warm welcome from colleagues right across the organisation and from partner colleagues as well. As I said before, I'm doing a conversation with all of our partners to get a feel for what they think in terms of the organisation priorities and challenges, what we do well, what we want to improve on. And I'm reaching the conclusion of that, and I will share that with colleagues in the next month. So that, I think that has been really helpful. I haven't heard anything that's been a surprise in those conversations, and I'm sure those messages and the feedback will be a surprise to colleagues when I bring that back for a conversation. As you will see from my report, the focus is particularly on some of the challenges that we are facing at the moment. There'll be several points on the agenda when we come back to the situation in the emergency department and our urgent and emergency care pathways. I'm really pleased that colleagues are here today to share with us their experience and their story. I'm very grateful to Emma. She took me through on Tuesday. We had a good walk around so that I was refreshed in terms of what it's feeling like from both the patient and staff perspective in that department. And I think it's important that we put on record an apology to staff for the environment in which they're operating, and it's really challenging, and we know that, but also to our patients. We know that patients are not getting to the right bit of our health and care system in a really timely way. The BBC coverage was very fair week before last in terms of the experience of both patients and staff working in that system. So I think it's important that we put that on record. The consequences that patients are not getting to the right bit of our care system in a timely way, both at the front door as they transfer through our services. So when we get on to the performance report and talk about things like our stroke performance, one of the reasons that we're not achieving what we want in our stroke performance is the delay in terms of beds in our stroke unit, because we're not able to move patients through. So it's not just the impact on the ED, it's impact right way through in terms of other areas where harm will be coming to patients because of delay in terms of getting to the right definitive treatment. So you will hear lots of work being undertaken, both in terms of the physical environment where we're, Darren will touch upon that in the estates plan in terms of where we want to go with that and the opportunities for further improvement, but also the work support team that Sarah is leading through the workforce point of view, with operations colleagues, and the work that we're doing as part of the whole system with local authority, third sector partners, to ensure that we are enabling patients to get back home as quickly as possible, and also reviewing who is turning up and making sure they're coming to the right place, because we've heard examples of a situation where patients are probably coming to ED when that's not the appropriate pathway for them, and we want to review and take stock of that. A couple of other things then to just highlight, if I may, Jan. We had the Ministerial Advisory Group meeting recently, so colleagues will probably be aware this is a ministerially appointed group to look at productivity and efficiency in the NHS in Wales, to look at what more we can do within the resources that we've got available to us. They had an intensive visit, to very grateful to staff and team colleagues who gave up their time to show the MAG members our services. So they have got a particular focus on emergency care, planned care, cancer and diagnostics. But they heard about the context in which we're operating. So they came and they saw and they visited Morriston Hospital, and then they gave us feedback. And generally the feedback was very constructive in terms of the things that we're doing well. And the areas for improvement, again, they were not surprises. So that was helpful to kind of triangulate the evidence around where we need to make further progress. You'll notice from my report they want to come back in 6 months. So they set us some challenges about things that we ought to be giving urgent priority to. We haven't had the report yet. I think it's recommendations will go to the Cabinet Secretary at the end of March. But we've had some initial feedback and we're acting upon that work. Two other things I'd just like to draw attention to. I mentioned in the report leadership and management, recognition of where we are in terms of new colleagues joining us over the next few months. We have arrangements in place to recruit to the Public Health Director role imminently. So hopefully within the next couple of weeks we should have some news on that and be able to confirm that we've got some cover for the public health position. And I'm aware that this is Hazel and Narissa's last board meeting. So Hazel's obviously stepped out somewhere. She moved.
Next to the desk.
Yeah, excellent. So I just wanted to thank both Hazel and Narissa for the time I've been here. You have been a real wise counsel to me, and I've really appreciated your work and contributions in the time that I've been here and the time that you have worked for the organisation prior to me arriving. I know Hazel's going on to exciting new career step, and we'll keep in close contact with Hazel as she progresses through that. And there'll be a connection when I come on to a little bit more of my report in a minute. And Narissa, she might not be gone for very long or for very far, because again, when we talk about mental health, we know we need some capacity to help us develop our strategic plan for mental health and learning disability, and we're in conversation with Narissa about how we might secure the capacity going forward. But I wanted to put on record their contribution as executive to say thank you. Jan, just a couple of other things then I'll draw attention to, because I'm assuming that people will read the report. Just coming back to emergency and urgent care, Jan, you've picked it up in terms of the importance of prevention. We know we didn't get anywhere near where we wanted to in terms of vaccination for flu and winter viruses. We're seeing a bit of an upturn again of flu based on the figures that we were looking at yesterday in the executive team. And we want to learn what more we can do for next winter to encourage more people to take uptake. So we are going to do a comprehensive review of the winter, and we will bring that back to the board in May. That will inform our plans in the going into 25-26 winter to see if there's anything more that we can do as part of that work. In terms of cancer services, we have received the Order of Wales report. It will come up as part of the targeted intervention report that Craig will introduce, and in terms of a performance report, we will bring a comprehensive update back. We have an assistant medical director, Raj, has been doing a lot of work leading our cancer group. And what we've asked is they bring back a really comprehensive overview of cancer, from prevention right the way through to how we're ensuring definitive diagnosis, treatment, and ongoing care for people who live with cancer on an ongoing basis. The only other thing I wanted to flag, Jan, is that we have a number of items on the agenda relating to our maternity and neonatal services. And as part of our escalation arrangements in relation to maternity and neonatal services, where we're in enhanced monitoring, and something we want to do for ourselves, is that we will be doing a review of the birthing centre and home birth service, which we reintroduced back in October, September. October. And we'll make sure that any learning from that experience we're taking forward as part of our work. And again, we'll bring that back to the board in May as part of our work programme. I will stop. Sorry, John, if I can just pick up the mental health. Sorry, I meant to pick that up. We had a deep dive on mental health back in the autumn, looking at our mental health services, understanding better our mental health services in our board development session. We brought that into a board conversation at our last board meeting. And just to confirm that we have now appointed Melanie Walker as a board level advisor to us. Melanie was 10 years as the chief exec in the Devon Partnership Trust, which is where Hazel is going to. So as Mel arrives with us this week and starts work with us tomorrow, there'll be a bit of crossover. So I'm sure Hazel can pick Mel's brains. Mel retired, I think, last summer. Is a nurse by background and will come and support us in terms of our scrutiny challenge as we develop our mental health service. So that is really good news as well. And Jan, I'm happy to take questions on any of the other items. Thank you.
On that last point, just to let the board know, our February development session, the end of February, we will have one big chunk on mental health services. Mel will be with us and talk us through what is going to be happening as part of that review. But Craig, can I just ask you to check with Nuria, if you're going to make any mention at all of this report, the cancer? No, you're not, because otherwise Nuria would leave us. So thank you very much. Thank you. Helen, I know you wanted to come in. Gorda.
Thank you, Chair. Just on the vaccinations, we're hearing from diverse communities that they can't understand the letters that they're having, and we have to think of the language barrier with them. So it's just to give you the heads up, maybe looking at next year that there is a language barrier.
Thank you, Helen. That's really important. Yeah, thank you. And we'll come and talk to you about that as part of the review about what we could do about that.
Thank you, Helen. That's a really important point. Nuria, please come in.
Abby, thank you for your report. I found it really helpful. In relation to vaccinations, I just wanted to confirm that you will be bringing in Public Health Wales and looking at behavioural science too, and expertise around that, just so that we understand further what could be some of the barriers, not just the practicalities, but in terms of how we can change behaviours. In terms of, I really welcomed the honest conversations, compassionate leaders pledge. I thought that was really good news, and I'm really pleased that we signed up to it. But I note the list of how you're supporting it, and one of the things that I wanted to highlight is that the issue around systems and processes is really important for our staff in terms of being able to, for us to being able to show them how we are applying the compassionate leadership pledge. So I just wanted assurance that that's actually also something that you're looking at.
Thank you. Any more questions or comments before I ask Abby to answer? Nicola.
Oh, hi, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Abby, for the report. Just wanted to pick up on the Ask Abby. It's great to see the engagement with staff, and I was just wondering what numbers were like in the monthly meetings. And I was wondering if it's at all possible, I'm not sure if it's appropriate, but whether IMs may be invited individually to run the month, just to be able to hear staff's reports if possible.
Thank you. Richard, do you want to come in before Abby?
Yeah, well, so the numbers have varied so far. So I think it's something like between 80 and 120 and 130. So it depends which day we're doing it on. So we're constantly fine-tuning to try and work out the best time to do it. And I think in terms of invitations, there's a very open invitation, so we can extend that.
So we'll make sure that independent members have the times, the dates and times. Thank you. Abby, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And just to say, building on what Richard was saying, there will be many channels of which we're trying to communicate with our staff, because we know that particularly clinical patient-facing staff will find it difficult to free up their time to come along to some of those things. So making sure things like the midweek message and cascade of information down is happening, as well as the exec team and me being out and about as much as possible. But we're going to come back to a conversation at a future meeting around how we increase our engagement, both with staff across the board and into our community. So we're just starting to explore what that might look like and bring something back, Nicola, on that as well. The vaccination, definitely keen to understand the kind of the science behind how we nudge and ensure that we pick up in terms of staff and vaccinations. So recognise that, Nuria. In terms of the leadership piece, The Compassionate Leadership Pledge is one aspect of a whole range of things we need to do around leadership and development. It is about honest conversations. It is about teams having really clear team plans, and that everyone understands what their contribution is. So when I come back and talk about my sense of the first 3 months and the organisational review, there is definitely something about the systems and processes, the organisational design, the organisational framework, the kind of accountability, and the compassionate leadership is around being able to have a really engaged workforce, really being able to empower people, really ensuring that teams operate with clear team plans, and getting some of those basics absolutely right in the organisation. I'm sure we're doing lots of those things really well, but the staff survey will also give us some really important insights to shape that. And the final thing to add, when we have had the conversation with Halvar as part of the joint committee, we've identified leadership and management capability and support as one of the priorities we'd like to work together on. And I think that gives us a really, really big opportunity to take this work forward together. Thank you.
So I've got Rena, Matt, then Pat, and then we will need to draw this item to a close. Rena.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one. In terms of sort of staff feedback, I was really impressed I think it was in the newsletter, Richard, with the number of staff that had come forward with suggestions with regard to money saving ideas. And I'm hoping that we are feeding back fully on to the staff on what we're doing with those suggestions, because I really do feel we need to complete the loop. And even if some of them are not workable now, it's still very positive that we've had such a good response to that. And the other thing I just wanted to comment that I'm really encouraged by the plan for the women's health plan coming forward, because I do think it is an area that, in a sense, when you look at the type of services we offer, we really do need to join them up and make sure there is a comprehensive plan for women's health across our health. So I'm really pleased to see that coming forward.
We'll take Matt and Pat, and then Abby, if we can, Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It was just in response to Helen's query around letters and the legibility and whatnot. Just to say that, and whether it addresses the specific context of what you're talking about there, Helen, we have got a programme of work of offering our letters to patients in a digital format. But part of that work is to look at the quality of those letters. So as we're preparing for a big launch of our patient portal to provide patient appointment letters over the coming months ahead, part of that work that's happening right now across all services is standardising the letters that they have, so we make sure we improve that quality.
Thank you. Pat, please come in.
Just in relation to something Nuria raised in the last meeting, in terms of the compassionate leadership programme, I was just wondering how we're going to, make improvements and embed those improvements across the health board in relation to the requirements of the Speaking Up Safely framework, because there's work to do there, I think, to make sure that we get feedback and that feedback is acted upon.
Yes, I can see Sarah's jumping up to wanting to respond to that. Sarah, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I do recognise we've still got work to do and reflecting on the discussions in audit committee. And it's about ensuring all of our leaders across the organisation realise it's their responsibility to manage that. So there's some work that we're going to be doing in terms of how we centrally report around our various opportunities and voices being raised, to be very clear on the themes that we're hearing, and then to replay that back to the organisation through our business partners and ensuring that infrastructure. So recognise there is some work to do, and I know that it's the intent to take some more of that plan around that to the Workforce and OD committee.
Abby, do you want to wrap up finally then with the comments, and then obviously people can follow through with Abby outside the meeting.
That's what I was just going to say, Jan. There's a lot in here, and I will refine my report probably to focus on a number of things and sharpen it up as I go forward and get a feel for what you'd find helpful in the report. But so if you haven't got any comments about how I can best develop this report, I'd be really happy to hear from colleagues. Or if you want to follow up more specifically on anything, I'm happy to take that outside the meeting, Jan. So thank you.
So we're happy to take assurance from the wide ranging report we've had from Abby, noting some specific points that we're going to follow through on. So thank you. So at that point, I'm going to hand over to Hazel Powell to introduce most important item we have today, the staff story.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's a really important staff story we're hearing today. So just to further add my thanks to the chairs and abbeys, to Emma, Charlie and Joe for coming along this morning and to briefly introduce them. So Charlie has worked in ED at Morriston since spring 2019 and recently been appointed into her senior sister role. And Joe has worked within the ED since summer of 2022 and is a really strong advocate and support to the Band 5 workforce. Their story this morning is really important for us to hear, and it will outline both the positives and the challenges for staff working in what we know is a very pressurised ED department. And I think we all understand that the experiences of patients coming through the department isn't always the best, that we have people coming in often at the most vulnerable, and we often only have one chance to get that right in terms of outcomes and patient experience. And I know all of us in this room would want to get that right absolutely every time. We don't always currently because of the pressures within our system. And I think we do understand the impact that has on patients, but also the impact it has on our nurses and our medical staff and our staff working in those environments. None of us want to give care in suboptimal environments. So I think it's really important to hear from Joe and Charlie this morning. And we're a friendly bunch. I'm going to hear you starting. So I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Do you want to move down to the middle of the room so we can all see you easily? Would you like Maria and Matt, will you swap places with Charlie and then we can all see, rather than be in the corner, then we can all see you. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you. So first of all, just wanted to say thank you for inviting us. My name is Jo. I joined the NHS in 2007, predominantly emergency care. I worked for NHS England. I moved back home to Wales in 2012 and moved to the emergency department a few years ago. When I first joined the ED team, it was a really, really strong team. I think we had Karen and Rachel as matrons, and they used to fight our corner. They were very focused on staff morale. And I think we got to the point where we didn't need bank or agency staff. And it was a short window, but it was a really positive time. And I think last year, from April onwards, we noticed the pressures increased and staffing levels dropping off. I think it was especially when the Welsh Government put a hold on us using bank and agency staff or agency. And we had our own agency staff that were familiar with our environment and we could rely on them.
Competent staff as well.
Yes.
Within ED.
So we've lost a lot of our staff. They've sidestepped, they've taken on Band 5 roles in the community. A lot of them have gone to Prince of Wales. And this has a huge knock-on effect for staff that are left. I ran Blue Recess last week. I had a lovely but international nurse who needs a lot of extra support from myself. Not very strong leadership skills. And I had a lovely nurse came down from ITU who had never set foot in ED before. I've got 5 resus spaces with 5 very sick, high acuity patients. I can't leave that area with those nurses and have the confidence. So my anxiety is already very high. If I go on my break, I'm asking other seniors in other areas whether they will just keep an eye but they've got their own pressures and their own own areas. Senior staff now are spread thinly throughout the department. So we might be in each area, we don't get to interact as a team. We interact afterwards, a lot of us offload to each other. The pressures in the department, I often run out of trolleys, I run out of oxygen because of those extra patients in the middle that shouldn't be there or in front of fire escapes. We haven't got the equipment to care for these patients. We haven't got the resources to care for these patients. I am often wandering around looking for cardiac leads so that I can monitor my patient. And I might have to look and say, do they really need to be on that because my patient needs it more? What else? What else can we say, Charlie?
I think, my name's Charlie. I'm a in charge nurse, senior sister. I think the challenges I face when I'm nurse in charge is very difficult. It's a very harsh environment. There's not one shift at the moment that I don't have staff nurse crying, feeling that they're not given the care that they can. They're worn out, they're exhausted, they feel under immense pressure. And also, I think the biggest thing at the moment is the dignity, and it's not right. You know, the words we hear are, we're working in a war zone, it's like a third world country.
Playing Russian roulette
yeah.
with our pin when we go in. I came in to see Charlie last night to discuss obviously what was going to go on today. And I could see there were 7 patients in the middle.
Which remained all night.
One man was exposed.
At one point.
One man was exposed to this isn't okay. You know, this could be our family members. Yeah. We're not going to read from it. So we wanted to get a fair scope of all the staff. And so we went round and got everybody's.
We started with positives.
Everyone's opinion.
These are words of staff.
Yeah, yeah. We went round and had a chat. I would say over the highly trained nurses, again, we are lacking there. And that is, that needs to be a focus. We've got newly qualified nurses in the department now. They can't possess the skills that we need. They can't give IV medication. They can't be left in an area without strong support.
Should I go to the overview slides? Because there's the one.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think there's some comments.
These are just comments, yeah.
Able to reflect and
Yeah.
have a look at.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
What we'll do, because there's quite a lot of detail on there, my suggestion, Jan, is that
Yeah.
we take the slides and
Yeah.
that colleagues can,
Yeah, we would like
copies of
to,
those. Yeah, so that
to try and,
Yeah. we can make sure that all the board members get a copy of the slide.
I think, you know, before my shift, probably the day before, I will start running through what's it going to be like.
Yeah.
And I will look on Allocate to see who I'm working with or who I'm not working with and think, right, where am I going to be? And the anxiety builds. And I never get a full night's sleep before my work because I will wake up, here we go. And you're literally prepping yourself to go into the noise, the abuse we get. And rightly so from
The
people
abuse
that,
is rising daily,
yeah, it's-
physically and verbally. Verbally more so. There's a lot of verbal abuse.
Yeah.
And it's getting worse, and it's noticed throughout. There's not a shift that we don't get abused verbally by either a patient or the
Relative.
member.
and they're frustrated.
Yeah, it
And
is
I do,
frustration.
if I had £1 for every time I apologised on my shift, you know, it'd be a nice little bonus at the end. Because that's all I say to people. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. This isn't why I went into nursing. I'm so sorry. I never envisaged this. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, when you are trying to give IV medication in a car park, you know, and it's raining and we're out there trying to find the ambulance, but the ambulances have moved. And it's very surreal. And you're sort of.
So last night I had one bed.
What am I doing here?
I had plus 12 patients on the department in inappropriate areas. So when I mean that, I say they're in the middle, like you've probably seen the other day. And these beds now are so close to each other
Yeah, they can touch.
that these patients are touching, basically. There's no infection control, you know, this is bad. And I managed to make one space by going plus again. And I had to choose between 3 critically unwell patients of who was the most unwell to take that bed, leaving the other 2 in serious danger. This is the reality daily.
Well, and in the resus areas, to have a plus patient, to have an extra patient on a trolley in a resus area is crazy. But to have 2, and we recently had an incident where the patient at the back, so in front of the fire door, had a cardiac arrest.
I don't think, because it's public board, I don't think we can talk about individual cases, but I think it's been incredibly brave of you both to come here to share with us all, you know, how your experiences of moving the I think it helps us as a board understand these.
I think solutions wise, we would.
I think nurses are scared at the minute with the heightened abuse we're getting. And I think especially with the recent case in Manchester, as we're all aware of, I think that's the harsh reality of being an ED nurse.
Yeah.
I think we would like, if possible, security, because there's only 2 security in the hospital by night. And they struggle sometimes if they're over on the other side of the hospital and we're ringing with someone, we're left very open and very, you know.
Yeah, we are all very vulnerable.
Yeah. Thank you both. That has been very sobering.
So
we're a great team.
So you talked about the level of abuse that you're facing.
Yeah.
And you clearly should. We do understand that people get very frustrated.
Yeah.
Every length of time they wait, but the answer is not to take it out on staff, and we are so sorry that you are experiencing that. So you've asked about security, particularly at night.
Yeah.
What else would ease things immediately while we try and look at it?
Honestly, what else? The biggest problems, I think staffing, you know, flow is the biggest issue. We know that, we know flow is the biggest issue.
I think our staffing levels.
Yeah.
I mean, yesterday we were told that we've been reduced for the amount of nurses on the floor.
A staff nurse said to me last night, we know we can't get flow. We know, you know, we know we're nursing patients where they shouldn't be. That is the reality of today's A&E, isn't it? But if we just had a few more staff, we could safely look after these patients. So for now, you know, that's a short sort of.
Yeah.
I think it would make a huge difference to patients and staff. There's something simple as a housekeeper that could come in, oversee breakfasts, do regular tea rounds.
Red Cross, don't we?
We have Red Cross and they're fab, but they don't start until 10 o'clock in the morning. And to have that would make a huge difference. And it sounds silly, but it would take pressure off ED staff, and patients would have regular somebody checking in and do you want a cup of tea? Have you eaten? That sort of thing. That would make a big difference.
I think so.
Personally.
Thank you. So, sorry.
So listen, before I ask anybody else, is there anything else you want us to know? Because we don't want you to go away and think, wish we'd said that. Why didn't we pick this up? We want to hear everything you want to tell us.
We don't reduce our staffing levels. That's my big one.
That's the biggest fear of everyone in the department.
Yeah. And we need to look at retaining the staff that we have. It takes, 18 months to get the skills that you need to be independent and be able to be in that area. Yourselves are training us up. I've been to Cardiff for 2 days. I've been here, there and everywhere to attain those skills needed. Advanced life support, the major trauma training, the list is endless. And I will then look at taking that lovely training that you've given me and going elsewhere, because I can't carry
I
on.
think with the drop in staff numbers as well, when as nurse in charge, I allocate my staff to areas. And when we run daily very low on staff, and then you put in like one staff nurse to an area to maybe 6 patients, maybe in a smaller space, which would be fine on a ward. If I used to work on a ward, I would nurse more than that. But these patients are acutely unwell, aren't they, in A&E? It is slightly different.
Yeah.
And I think with the drop as well, our waiting room now is a clinical area. We have patients out there, you know, my longest wait in the chair today was 146 hours. That patient needs nursing care. And if I don't have a nurse to go into the waiting room, then those patients would be in,
Well, they're at risk.
yeah.
Emma, was there anything you wanted to add to what Charlie and Joe have said?
No, mine was just thanks, Charlie and Joe, for coming today. I think it is really brave and very daunting. And also thanks for the extended team within ED for everything they do. I think there is one thing, if okay, is around our mental health patients and timely with what Abby briefly discussed earlier, and our ability to look after our patients who actually sometimes do need the emergency care to start off with, and then that ongoing pathway into mental health services, I think, is a huge area we could look at and continue to improve for the emergency department and for the patients for their ongoing pathway. I think that's one.
So it's been hard for us to listen to this, but we really needed to listen to it because we have to understand from yourselves what it's like day in, day out. It's not acceptable for you and it's not acceptable for our patients.
Yeah.
So I'm going to open it up now for comments and questions before I can ask Abby then to summarise what we're going to do. So Sarah, did you want to start?
Yes, I did. Thank you, ladies. Joe,
Hi.
we have met.
We have.
On a
Hi.
visit to
Yeah.
BD. So, you know, the challenges you set out, they're real. Having you in the room helps us get a sense of that. I know having been there, I understand what you're saying and it's not okay. And we have to do something about it. But most importantly, you're really brave in speaking out. So thank you. And, you know, we're not a scary bunch and we want to hear and we want to listen. And I think that's the most important thing. And actually, your actions in doing so, I'll come to in a minute, has meant we will be doing things to try and work with you to help you address some of those things. So I think that's really important for you to know. And I also want to acknowledge that despite those challenges, we are hearing some feedback that is really positive about the way you look after our patients. And I think it's really important you know that and you take that back. So reflecting on some of the verbal feedback we've had from HAW and a recent ministerial advisory group, the values you demonstrate and the compassion you show despite those challenges, that's not missed. And it's really important. And I think it's really important you go back as advocates for all of the staff in ED and you make sure you pass that back from us at board here. We understand and thank you for that. To pick up, based on your bravery of speaking up, what are we going to do about it? So I'm picking up on retention. My team are going to be working with your teams on the ground, working with the new quality leads in terms of patient focus and really coming up with a plan for you about what's going to help you address some of those challenges and empower you to do what you can. So thank you again. Don't forget that good feedback. Take it back. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Andrew, then Anne-Louise, then Helen.
Yeah, thanks Joe and Charlie for the story. I think first of all, just to reiterate that what we've heard is and what's going on at the moment is not okay. It's not okay for patients. It's not okay for you as staff. You're doing a fantastic job in really difficult circumstances. By the way, I'm Andrew Jarrett. I'm the Director of Social Services in East Port Talbot. I'm associate member on the board. I just wanted to ask though, because clearly attending the board is really good and it's really helpful that we hear firsthand exactly what's going on. But that shouldn't be the mechanism by which you have changes made. So do you feel listened to by the organisation? And not just listened to, I suppose, because listening is not enough, is it? Actually, there has to be a consequence of that listening, which is the changes that make things better. So do you feel that that's happening at the moment? Notwithstanding, there are some really big challenges that are going to take a long time to sort out. But as you said, there's some smaller challenges, but actually there could be some improvements made. So I just wanted to understand a bit more about how staff are feeling about that. Thanks, Chair.
So,
The honest answer is no, is what we hear staff saying.
So I called a Band 5 meeting last August, just to discuss our concerns and how we could improve the department. We issued just a statement, and ways that we could move forward. Some of it has been acted on. Again, obviously the pressures in the department dictate a lot, but there's still work that could be done. So no, I have to be honest. It's getting better, but no. It feels like we're saying the same thing over and over again.
That's another point that we will take on board. Anne-Louise,
So you mentioned not having time to offload to each other during the shift, and clearly from what you've described, it's not surprising. But how are you managing to take or have offload time with staff? Is it possible? How will that work? Is there a way of doing it better so that you seniors have an opportunity, but the other nurses do as well? How can that operate? How can we help? Charlie's definitely.
I've just started a wellbeing team. We have a wellbeing room every day now. We allocate whoever's in the wellbeing team to be and someone that the staff can go to. So there's a safe space where, say I'm on shift and part of the wellbeing team, I'll be named as the wellbeing champion for that day. And if anybody's feeling upset or needs a rant or even a safe space, they'll come and find me and I'll take them to a private space.
And you've said that's just started. How's it going?
Yeah, I think okay. I had quite a few last night and then they were smiling leaving the room. So
well done. That's well, it sounds like it's a really valuable thing to do. What about yourselves, senior staff? How much time can you give yourselves? And when you get into the car at the end of the shift, have you been able to talk to someone about the pressures? Would it help? Could there be a way of doing it?
I don't know how you would achieve it. Because by the end of the shift, I think everyone's focus is getting out the door without being.
No, that's the answer. It's that something needs to happen during the shift rather than at the end of the shift.
I don't know. I don't know how you would achieve it with the environment that we're in at the moment.
So Sarah, I'm going to bring in people who've not had an opportunity to come in first, and then I'll come back to you, okay? So we've got Helen. Helen joins us from Clyde, so we welcome Helen's contribution.
I'm sorry that you have to go through this as I just want to echo the chair's thoughts. We undertook an always visits to A&E and every A&E, and it's no help to you me telling you that A&E is exactly the same, but it is, and there will be a full report going to the Minister. We did pick up good practice within the A&E department, and the patients were very complimentary of the staff. Going forward, I would like to know what the short term is with the health board and what the long term pathway is with the health board for the public, along with how are you going to work with social care, because and that is the most important. The pathways are flowing, and I'm not blaming anybody. And what I'm saying is there needs to be more capacity within social care for you to get out, and it's how you work with the other organisations to help that. And I'd like to see, the short term and the long term plan, and that's not only, all over Wales. We'd love to see it, but I'd like it to see it, especially for
Thank you, Helen. We will come back to that at the very end, because Abby's going to sum up and say what we are doing in the short term, medium term, etc. Right now, I have Jean, Rena, Steve, and Sarah who'll come back in then. So, Jean, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies, for that summary. It was exceedingly difficult to listen to as an independent member. It's important that we know the truth. And more importantly, it's important that I've used lots of importance there, but it's exceedingly important that you can speak up, because unless you speak up, we can't pick up what's being said. And I know the executives and the staff at senior level are really keen to understand exactly how we can help moving forward. So You have been very brave. Thank you for that. But for me, Chair, if I may, there are three issues here. There's people, process, and place. So we can look at the place and the process and look at the staffing illustrations that you've given us and examine exactly how we can help there. But I would like to build on the point that's just been made earlier by Pat, was it? That
Was it Helen?
yeah, Helen, sorry, Helen. We have to look at, are we getting the right people into the emergency department? Or are you being expected to manage anything and everything that doesn't have a place and is not managed out in the community or in the primary care sector? So I think there's a bit of work to understand as to how we can stop people who shouldn't be presenting from presenting themselves.
Absolutely.
But I would like to thank you for your, not just your bravery coming here, because we're not scary people, we're humans just the same as you, but the job that you do day in, day out. I couldn't do it myself, so I take my hat off to you and your skills. So thank you for looking after the patients in the way that you do, under the stress that you're under.
Rena, would you like to come in?
Hi, thank you. I'm an independent member as well. I've been on the board for about 6 years, and it is very, I feel like it's really touched me to hear what you've had to say today, because I feel quite emotionally involved with this whole service, because I've been on the board for a very long time. It is very concerning. I do think we have to embrace the fact that we have a population that is getting older and frailer. And in some ways, therefore, we're not meeting those needs. We can try and divert people as much as we can, but there are going to be a number of these people who are going to end up in A&E. So in a sense, we have to get the capacity right. And I think there is obviously an issue with the building that we've got at the moment. We're not going to be able to change it overnight, but obviously there are plans for that, which I'm sure Andy will talk about. But one of the things that struck me about what you said was there's some basic housekeeping type measures that we can do right now. And I've been saying this for a while, that things like giving patients access to tea, maybe something to eat while they wait will possibly mean that they're less frustrated and less likely to take it out on you. Making sure staff are catered for properly in terms of their, if you like, refreshment needs and their needs for a rest or a cup of tea or whatever. Because it's always struck me when I've been in there, and I have unfortunately spent a number of nights there with my mother, who was quite elderly and had dementia. She's died now. But the reality being, it is not a good environment for the patients or the staff. And I think we just need to be aware of that and do what we can now in terms of those basic measures to enable you to perform your duties, which you're doing expertly, obviously, and to make it perhaps safer and more comfortable for patients and their relatives. So really thank you for coming in today. I really appreciate
Ian, shall I bring you in next?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So it's, thanks very much, lady. It's not really a question for you, but it's about something you said, and it's probably a question for the execs more. You've made a couple of references to reduction of staffing levels, and one of your asks is don't reduce our staff. Now, I know what this board has done is asked for agency usage to be restricted, not completely cut, but restricted. What we haven't asked is that nurse levels are cut so that the service is not safe. So my question is, what's going on?
We will come back to that. Thank you, Sue. That's a really important question. We will come back to that as well. Sarah, shall I bring you back in now to follow on a couple of points I know that you have some information on?
Yeah, so just to recognise and with a hope, giving you hope in the context of we hear you and what can we do. So some of that work I talked to you about the workforce team helping you, and to pick up your point around that ability for you as leaders on the ground and people on the ground to go home and have left it to work. So reflection huddle spaces and things like that. We want to work it with you in terms of what's going to help. Love the wellbeing engagement, and thank you. So what are the initiatives that we can work with you to help you give the skills, the tools, the space and the time? And sometimes a 5 minutes or thank you can be hugely important and reflective. Yeah. So just to acknowledge, really, we're going to be working with you in terms of some of that, and I take on board what you said.
Are there any more points or comments before I ask Abby if she'll outline, as Helen has asked, the short, the immediate, say Helen, the immediate, the short, and the medium. So Abby.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you both very much indeed, Charlie and Joe, for that. As other colleagues have said, really important that we hear it firsthand. And thank you very much for coming to do that today. And thank you for your ongoing commitment to caring for our patients in the best way that you can. And please pass on our thanks to the team. Jean, I'm going to use your people, place and process, if I may, and hopefully cover off the things that you've described in terms of immediate things that can help. I'm going to start with process, and the thing you talked about was flow. And from my perspective, flow is both what comes into the front door and what's going out the back door. We've got Andrew here. We've got a summit coming up next Friday, next Friday, time's going, to have another, this will be the third, to look up the action that we can take in terms of getting the right people coming to the right door. And there's something for me that you said something about things changed about a year and a half ago. You say April 23, 24.
Last year, yeah.
So for me, it's understanding what was the build up to what changed at a particular point that felt different, so we can come back and have a conversation to make sure we're applying the right solution. But certainly we were describing before some cases of people coming in from nursing homes who really shouldn't, that's their home, they should be kept at home, really frail older people. And what I've asked is that we do a review of the last 3 months the cases, because I know of 2, Craig, in the last week where people have talked about in their 90s coming in from a nursing home. And that's not fair to them. It's not so looking at what primary care is doing, what's coming into our front door. There's something about clearly the back end and making sure patients are able to flow through into the right bed, and therefore we've got to get people who shouldn't be in acute care back out. We've got to right size bits of our service right across health and social care. There's a commitment from our local authority partners to do that with us. We need to make sure that the time it takes to do bits of the step, that it's not you're waiting for the next thing to happen. Things can run in parallel. Different assessments can be running in parallel. We've got to get trusted assessing working properly across our agency so that an assessment in one place is taken as read when we move those assessments through the system. So there is a lot we need to do on the process, and we'll follow that up. We're going to do a winter review, so we'd really be grateful for staff feedback into what can we learn that can put us into better shape for next winter. And in terms of so in terms of process, that is what we really want to commit and focus on. In terms of place, I went on Tuesday, and what you described, I saw absolutely. There isn't. So we're going to try very hard to in the next couple of weeks to come up with a really quick fix that we can look at in terms of making it better for this coming winter, because it's going to need. It's going to need bringing something in on the back of a lorry and working out. It is not the permanent fix, but it's how can we create a bit more space in the short term. And it might mean we've got slightly clunky things with slight bits in the wrong place and what have you, but it's what on earth we can do in the short term. And I know the team did look at it, but it's how do you do that when you can't close the ED for 6 weeks to do something different with it. So it's what can we do in situ, but we are really committed to doing that. And as I said, it might be imperfect, but if it can be better in terms of additional space, then that's what we'll need to do. We've also got a plan, which is how would you design a new ED, which is really what we need to do. And for my sense of this is we've got lots of entry points. We've got same day emergency care. We've got surgical assessment unit. We've got acute medical admission unit. We've got minor injury. We've got GP out of hours. We've got the ED front door. And the differentiation of who goes where must be quite hard to determine, and getting the patient in the right place. So there's something about how we design our long-term solution, which is making sure that the patients get to the right place. Some places have gone to, there's just one big front door, right?
Single point of access.
So the conversation early on around how would we make that happen in terms of the flow through, and I'm not a clinician and I'm not an expert, but there's something that we need to commit to in terms of part of that. Jan and I are hoping to have a conversation with the Cabinet Secretary to to show him what that begins to look like in terms of a plan. So we've worked that through. And then the final thing is the people. So what I heard is that there's some additional contributions that could help now. So making sure security is visible and present, some housekeeping or extension of the voluntary support into the department in terms of providing food and hydration for people. And then there's the right sizing the staff for the department, and there's what you need now and then what you need when we've addressed these things. Coming back to your question, Steve, yes, we are having to juggle the fact that we've got a significant financial deficit that we have got to bring back under control. And the mechanisms we've got in place are absolutely about making sure we don't make our services unsafe, and there is a check and balance. That's why we have exec oversight of this now, so that we've got exceptions that we can approve and allow to make sure that we've got the right staff that we need for the shift. The issue isn't a continued reliance on agency. It's about having staff who want to be permanent members of the team, and we need to give staff the confidence that we are going to do the things that we said in terms of improving the department. People want to come and work here, want to come and train with us, and stay with us, and that's what we need to be able to achieve. So John, we'll take those specifics away in terms of things that we could do to improve things now. And I suggest when we come back and look at winter, we might want to invite some staff back and, get again, whether we ever come out of winter, but when we do a winter review, what could we do differently going into next winter? And is there anything we've missed? So that might be a way of doing it as well, Jan.
Yeah. So everybody applauds your courage in coming to talk to us this morning. I know it must have been daunting, but it's been hard, as we said, to listen. We have to listen. But more than that, we have to do something, because providing safe services that are the right in an environment in which staff are safe and enabled to do their job, and in which people can be cared for safely at the right time with the right facilities, equipment, and equipment. That is the point of the board, right? That is why we are here, and the backstops with the board, right? And I'm accountable to the Cabinet Secretary, and Abby and I will be meeting with them to explain that from the board's perspective, we know this isn't good enough. We're sorry. Saying sorry isn't enough. It isn't enough for you and all the staff in the department. It isn't enough for our patients. So please go away with the commitment that we are going to do something about this. We're going to sort the immediate issues that Abby's highlighted. We're going to do our very, very best to get you some temporary breathing space for this coming year. We'd like you to come back when we look at our winter plan for 25-26, which we're going to look at in the summer. We're not going to leave it so late. But Abby and I will come back to the department regularly. We'd like you to come back also, as I say, when we're looking at the winter plan. And then we will tell you what this board is doing, so that you don't go away thinking, well, what will happen now? Yeah. We give you our word that we will take action. And please take that back to the staff, because it can't go on. And thank you again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, so this is a quick 5 minute break.
Oh, I know. So open. That's weird. You think you can't even read them straight line.
So when is your,
We reconvene, so for some more. I did say, wouldn't that item run on, and I think we absolutely need to. So we now come on to part 3, setting strategic direction, and a very timely really update on this big strategy, given there are a number of really pressing the state financial. So I hand over to you to begin.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I think this report is a regular 6-monthly update the board receives on the current state strategy. There's a lot of detail in the report, and I recognise we're pressed, so I assume the majority is there. And just go to the key features.
Take the time you need down, because this is an important item, and I'm proposing we run through till 1 o'clock now before we have a. So take what time you need down.
Okay, thank you very much, appreciate that. The state strategy was approved by the board in May 2023, so it's almost approaching its second birthday, Chair. And I'll reflect on that in a moment when we get to the signing. And that was constructed following a 6-facet survey of the health board state taking place through 2022. So a really strong evidence base to allow us to start to assign the priorities. And I was grateful at the time for the establishment of a task and finish group chaired by the Vice Chair of the Health Board, independent member, to help us construct that in a sensible way. And at the time, we looked at matters pertaining to maintaining business continuity, and I'll touch on that as I go to the report. Recognising the scale of backlog maintenance in some of our estate, the clinical service plan of the health board at that time, I know we're working to reflect that now, and existing business cases already in various stages of development, either locally within the board or international projects. So that was the shape and architecture of the plan. That's driven the estate strategy to its current composition, which I know we will need to reflect on, Chair. If I just go out some key parts, walking through the report. On page 5, you'll note my commentary on Cummer Health Centre. We've sold Cummer Health Centre to the local authority, recognising the significant deprivation and inequality in that area and our ambition to improve services for the residents. We remain a tenant in that property, but what we're doing is we're now working on a preferred solution in Croesero Enterprise Centre, where we'll be able to co-locate health, social care and voluntary service provision under a single roof for that very challenged population there. So we're working through that at the moment. We're looking to get a case together, and that will feed into the regional partnership planning agenda. Really important piece there in that area of their organisation. From Morriston perspective, I'll come back to the ED, but in terms of the main entrance, board members will be aware that we, as part of the COVID response, constructed buildings in the main entrance. We've just finished the removal of those. The building is now retained in its former glory. And the final stages of development is taking place now with a new phlebotomy clinic and then lung function testing facility at the front of the hospital where the footfall is, which will be welcome and free up other space within very pressured parts of our estate. Page 7, it's a good picture there. It shows the impact of our roof refurbishment programme and the contrast between the bottom of the photograph and the top. We were very clear part of the significant backlog maintenance issues that we had were relating to roof structure, windows, fire alarm systems. And we've successfully bid for a further 4.5 million extra backlog maintenance from government this year, and through a programme called EFAB, which stands for the Estates Funding Advisory Board, where 70% is funded, the health board's funds the other 30%. We'll focus on streaming resource into these challenging areas, so it allows us to prioritise within certain pockets of money. That's evolved into a different mechanism this year, and there is more resource in that this year, and tomorrow I'll be submitting the health board response for that to further improve the EFAB. And across pages 8 to 9 of my report, the sort of breadth of the work underway across all the national programmes are set there. The majority of those cases are featured through board for approval on their way to Welsh Government, and we're progressing with the majority. Pages 9 and 10 advise the board of the scale of work required to plan for the exit from Neath Port Albert Hospital, which is a private finance hospital. That exit is May 2030. We've had a significant amount of professional advice about how organisations transition from now. Actually, it's 2030 to do that, and we're building a programme that work to work through that, developing the necessary surveys, legal advice, etc. And with your permission, Chair, future boards, I'd like to bring a more substantive item on that through because it's complex and it will require us to manage services in a slightly different way to do so. I referenced in the paper the national capital prioritisation work. That wasn't available at the time of drafting the report. We have since had results of that, as have every health board across Wales. And it's fair to say that feedback reflects the scarcity of capital against the range of priorities that organisations have. And we've been advised through that correspondence that there are three main areas the health board can progress with at the moment. This isn't a guarantee of business case approval. It's permission to proceed to develop those cases. And those are the emergency department at Morriston, urology theatres, particularly technological advancements in those theatres in Port Talbot, and the hybrid theatre, which is that case is with government at the moment, which fundamentally leaves some really key issues for us unaddressed, Chair. And just to make the point on these, we just had the incredible colleagues from the emergency department. The number one priority of the emergency department redesign is contemporary and with us. We'll be looking, and I'm going to walk the unit on Monday to see what we can do to Abby's point earlier around a temporary fix. We know that working within the existing fabric, when you've engaged with clinicians to do this, the scale of change needed is incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to execute in a line environment. And therefore, that takes us into two paths. What can we provide immediately to take pressure off colleagues to provide a better environment for patients? But also, what is that next step for a new facility, recognising that the patient flow and the various front doors that we've got. Fortunately, we've planned for this. We have space, we have the fields, we have designation for health in the planning applications that we've got. So we need to proceed very quickly with our clinical colleagues now to look at what that design looks like in that case before government. I know both yourself, Chair, and Chief Executive, Abby, are actively involved in lobbying that forward, and that coincides with that priority. However, we know there are adult mental health wards and older people's mental health wards, Kevin Coyd, one in East Port Talbot and at Tonna, are not fit for purpose, and that's probably an understatement in terms of not fit for purpose. They require immediate address. And whilst we have had a case with Welsh Government for a number of years regarding adult services, that does not feature in the priority, and therefore it's incumbent upon us to do something creative to resolve that problem, and we will do that with the commissioners. And finally, just in terms of the three big areas, but there will be others. Regional pathology is a key underpinning element of the clinical care that we deliver, and that's something we work hard on with Hywel Dda as well. A case has been developed to significant millions to do so, and we now know that that's not part of that priority process as well. And I've started to engage with colleagues to see whether we could look at a creative private health sort of partnership to enable us to potentially build something very novel and to have contemporary equipment within there that would allow us to retain and have creative workforce models across the region, recognising the challenges in that service. So slightly different approaches to the wicked challenges that we have. I'm grateful, Chair, for the conversations we've had outside of this room about re-establishing the task and finish group pace to visit those three areas forward principally, but we'll look at the priorities and then to reflect a revision to the estate strategy, reflects the journey we've been on, the successes we've had, but also the significant challenges that lay before us. There's more in the report, but let's put that message now.
Thank you, Jan. That's a really helpful overview there. And just picking up on that last point for board colleague, I've asked Steve if he will chair the reconstituted task force on all aspects of land, estates and assets, given that the asset base we have will need to shrink, and we need to be creative in the use of our land, and there are huge issues around some aspects of our estate which we're going to have to be creative over. So this does need a specific task force with Steve chairing. So I'm hoping that colleagues would support that. And an adjunct with that, Steve and his counterpart, Eleanor from Hywel Dda, will again take the independent member lead on what creative solution we can find for regional pathology. Because that might be a creative capital solution, which will then help us with a more broader agenda. So I hope colleagues will agree with that. So thank you. So Anne-Louise, did you want to come in?
I did, please. I'm going to try and, I had various comments and things, but I'm going to sort of put them into one thing. And it's looking at the risk register. The estate's risk is categorised as 16. And I have a concern about that because, first of all, pace. And I recognise that one of the problems with getting any pace behind it is lack of capital, the difficulties. It's good to hear that there has been some capital, but it's such a Sisyphean task to try and capture all the things in order to be able to keep the show on the road. But my concern is that as the estate continues to deteriorate because there can't be enough capital and there can't be enough pace in order to bring it about, there is a risk of collapse. We've got problems with hospital-acquired infection to do with overcrowding and the old estate. And that can't be addressed except by decanting. And if we need a decant ward because there is a collapse of the ceiling, look at Princess of Wales. And there are huge risks to both staff safety and patient safety, both in terms of their medical conditions and staff physical conditions, but also overall visitors, etc., having accidents and costing us money in terms of redress and claims against the hospital. And it just feels unsafe. And I just don't feel that 16 is high enough in terms of the whole thing. I appreciate it would have to sit on the risk register for some time because we can't really address it, but it's just recognising the scale of the risk.
Thank you, Annalise. Darren, do you want to come back on that?
Steve. So just thank you for the point, Annalise. It's a big label, isn't it, capital estate, and it means everything we've got.
Yeah.
So just reflecting on your comments, I think perhaps what we need to do is start to stream that into key areas. So if you talk about the roof, for instance, when we did the survey, we knew that the integrity of the structure of the roof was okay. It was the covering of the roof that was allowing the water ingress. That was a high risk of business continuity. As we're doing that, we're taking the risk because we've hit the key areas. When you see the emotive environment that our ED colleagues are in, I would suggest the environment for ED is because the different risk assessment, which would be higher on that environment. So perhaps I can take something away, which is still a bit of the things that you addressed in the paper and nuance that the individual areas. That would help.
Yeah, that would help that.
That would then help target the effort.
Yeah.
Steve,
Yeah, there are a couple of things, Darren. The 821 million, that's been around for a few years now, like 2022 prices, and there's been a lot of inflation since then. So will we be reassessing those values? Because I guess we're not going to be far short of £1 billion. I think all of them at current prices. That's the first. And the second, there's references in your paper to Glen Reed and the medium secure unit and the seclusion suite. But there was a significant fire there recently, wasn't there? And I wonder how the rebuild is going and whether that is being done independently of all of these capital plans that you're talking about.
So just with regard to the incident at Titan Erith, where the ward's been closed, we were being in partnership with Cwmsarc Mechanic. It's their building with our service in it. We've agreed because of the specialist nature of the care environment that Swansea Bay will lead the capital refurbishment. We're discussing the reimbursement of that with Welsh Risk Pool. There is no impediment to the funds flow to sort that. So we're working through the detailed design at the moment, given the specialist nature of that area. It's a relatively new piece of estate actually, which was applied to healthcare technical memorandums. But that is running as a very separate stream as quickly as we possibly can to return that to its former state, recognising that the patients who were resident there are currently in a higher security environment.
Yeah.
And we've got ambition to develop that as well. So that's in terms of the costs of some of these, you'll note from the top of the list on the appendix that the ED improvement for Morriston has got a notional 27 million against it. It will be substantially more than that should we be allowed to proceed with a new build, which we will lobby passionately for. So all of this and the reprioritisation of this will require a refresh. Some items can actually come off as well because we've been quite successful at some enhanced developments. I suspect the rolling figure of what will always be substantial, but we need to be honest to that, particularly given the inflation on things like steel and building materials recently, let alone feet and others. So I think if we can pick that up as part of the task and finish and get that reprioritised set through, and we can look at some notional figures to bring that to life.
Okay, Steve. Yeah, thank you. So I have Jean, then Rena, then Julia. Jean.
Thank you, Chair. One of the points I have to make, I've made before, so forgive me, Darren, but when we're looking at future conflict area buildings and we're looking at the siting of various service areas, can we please be more strategic about any short-term decanting from one area to another that we're undertaking? Because I know Rena and I last year when we visited children's mental health, etc., they were talking about the disparate sites that they have to cover. And a number of service areas are in the same position where they're moving from one area, sometimes across a car park to take an X-ray. So when we are thinking about future strategy, could we think about where we're placing people in the interim? Because that is just disrupting, and for staff, it's totally demoralising.
Thank you, Jean. I'll take Rena, no response now, and then ask you to come back. Rena, please come in.
Thank you. I mean, I did raise after performance and finance, given the state of play and given the lack of finance, were there other possibilities that we could look at in terms of finance and private sector investment or whatever, some kind of loans arrangement like a mortgage to actually invest in our capital. And it doesn't seem to me there's a lot of options out there. But I do think one of our options is that we do have this land base. And I'm really pleased that we're going to be looking at this, because if we can get our land utilised for other things and get the money for it, then hopefully it will enable us to advance more quickly. But the thing I was particularly taking with Anne Louise's comment, that we do need to put some pace into this, because I feel we've been going round the loop on particularly Kevin College, and I'm particularly concerned about the state of play, and I'm sure we all are. But we have been going round the loop of looking at this business case for at least the whole time I've been on the health board. So I don't have a problem with the proposal, but I do feel we need to conclude where we're going with it and come up with a plan that we are all signed up to, and obviously then start to look at what we can do to finance it, because currently at the moment, the money isn't there. But it certainly seems to me it needs to align with whatever we're doing on our clinical services plan on mental health and learning disabilities. It needs to link across and make sure that, as Jean said, that we're future-proofing whatever we come up with to consider all the best, if you like, provision of services and the best services for our patients. Here's my list. Thank you.
Really important points there. Nuria, just take your points before handing back to Darren. Nuria.
Darren, a lot of my points have already been covered, so I'm going to be very, very, very specific. I would like assurance that as part of the CAIMA, I'm probably saying this wrong, we apologise, my Spanish accent, GP project, will be looking to maximise wider benefits through co-location of services and generating opportunities to support community wellbeing. I would also like, I know that there are new procurement rules coming in around social responsibility procurement. Could I seek assurances that those requirements are being baked into a strategic approach to procuring construction and maintenance of our estate?
Darren, I'll come back to you then with all the different points there.
So if I turn to Jean's point, it's a very well made point about PCAMs. We have traditionally probably struggled because there aren't that many gaps in the program, but we'll absolutely take that on board, yes, and we're working through. Just to perhaps add a bit of flavour to that, we're having detailed conversations at the moment with the mental health service group about provision, particularly in Swansea City Centre, but not exclusively, because we have a number of services which are in poor accommodation and not far from each other. And there's a discussion to be had around revisiting Swansea Wellness Centre to do some of that. But also even on acute sites, we know that PCAM space is challenging, and board designation seems to change every time. One calling of K was L is now S. And we know that affects staff in terms of moving and where patients are located. So it's a point well made that I'll take into the operational discussions we have with the planning. From Tarina's perspective around technical finance and opportunities, I'm absolutely up for that. We're actively searching it down. There are models where you can be very VAT efficient as well and get really good services to support the delivery of care. So I've got my procurement and capital teams scanning the UK at the moment for those models, because it would have to work within the UK kind of government environment really, but we can look as well. In terms of disposals, I think you probably started to answer the point that we make a little bit there in terms of the clinical service plan and the fact that we have multiple similar services and multiple sites needs to wash through. And then we can start to look at some of those clinical co-locations and adjacencies with a very clear mind to dispose what is ineffective and actually maximise what will be effective. And board members will know we own 55 acres around Morris, and it's a huge opportunity for us to just refresh this work through the task and finish and see how that. From a CAMA perspective, I think the initial solution is born out of partnership, and it's a little frustration about it as well, to be honest. I know local authority colleagues had struggled to get that to work through, and we worked really well at the end of last financial year to start to build that. I think we've unlocked some of the problems there. So that's progressing really well, and there's local political, local government and health interest in making sure that centre really is optimised. And in terms of the procurement rules, I was talking to my head of procurement earlier this week. They've been on extensive training programmes. This is about to become live. We will engage it's meaningful way to do that. I think it's going to be complicated and it may slow things down. We need to really hit that at the right speed. We should be, in terms of your points around governance earlier, Chair, stepping well ahead of that to make sure those things work in the right way.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope those responses are fine for those who asked the question. So Abby, shall I ask you to bring this bit to a conclusion?
Yeah, thank you, and really grateful to everybody's input on this. It is like a jigsaw puzzle, and making sure all the pieces come together in the right sequence are really important. Two things I just want to add. There is a very specific requirement in the planning guidance for this coming year that we absolutely do everything we can to make best use of space and to shrink the space in which we are occupying. We operating on many sites, and that will be contributing to what it's costing us in terms of our run rate of delivering services. So there is an economic argument, but there is also a clinical one about clinical adjacencies and alignment. And the world moves on, and we do need to revisit some of these things to make sure we've got the right pathway. And some of the things that we've discussed earlier on around connection between what we do on acute sites and mental health and some of those issues we will come back to very quickly. Just on the other funding options, again, I had a brief conversation with Judith Padgett this week. It was a routine catch-up meeting with her, but we focused on ED and the estates and mental health. And the offer of support for government working with us, but also the expectations. So we know that there's a really big push to things like housing, and an opportunity around freeing up land for things like that will be really important as part of the conversation. And then the only other final thing, so in terms of things like other models, we don't have the flexibility some of the foundation trusts in England have, but the MAG who came to visit did talk about some opportunities, and I've had some contacts with Sloman, the chairman and the chairperson of the Ministerial Advisory Group, who's given us some contacts, which I don't think come through this morning. So I will forward those on. And the other thing I was going to suggest we did is that the chief execs held an away day to look at kind of the plan for the next 10 years going forward and what might we need to do different, so we can contribute to the Ministerial Advisory Group and the conversation with government about what needs to change. And we did bring in two individuals, one who I worked with closely before, involved with Cardiff and Vale, and the other I don't know, but they are experts in terms of all sorts of opportunity of freeing up land, doing things differently. And at the first meeting of the Task and Finish group, or maybe the second one, we might want to do a bit of invite to them to just share their knowledge and experience to open our eyes up to anything we haven't seen before. And I know they would both be very willing to do that. So we can make those contacts and link across.
So thank you very much for that. So as we said at the start, we support the funding in the task and the task force really, Steve, with a really wide agenda now in respect of land assets and estates. We'll bring the terms of reference back to the board in March, just for confirmation in terms of how wide that's going to be. We take assurance in respect of our existing estates strategy that is progressing. So we obviously acknowledge all the issues around the Morrison site and the ED, to which we're giving specific priority. And then Darren, you referenced private finance and the exit plan from Leaf.org. Well, he's absolutely right to start that planning now. So we bring that into the task force, but then it will need to come back. And it will need to form part of the IMTP for 25-28, really, as preparation. So if we can look at that. And then, of course, we acknowledge that even though things like Kevin Coyne and the regional pathology solution aren't in the national priority list at the minute, we have to give them priority and we have to look at creative solutions. Is that okay? Thank you. And thank you very much, Dan, to you and your team, and for everything you do to actually keep this going. Thank you. So we'll move then on to section 3 of, continue on section 3 rather, the last bit, which is around the Population Health and Partnerships Committee update. And Steve, perhaps within this, you could weave in the plans from it.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
So kicking off with the 3 alerts that are in the report. the first one though was that the committee was concerned that there wasn't an executive director position looking after children and young people services. We've got a little bit of mitigation there, and there's a strong team in the Singleton Neathport Talbot service group overseeing this. They report up through the triumvirate boards to the management. So my question remains: do we see the need for an executive position on this board that has particular responsibility for that, or are we happy with the flow through the Singleton Neathport Talbot management mechanism? So that's an open question. The second one is, well, we're all aware the committee was concerned the population health domain had not been invested in sufficiently. There was a lack of capacity and capability within the health board. I mean, we are aware that we have invested in the population health agenda over the years. And currently we don't have an exec, for example, because Jennifer has gone and not been replaced yet. So, but I know that chief executive and the new chief executive and chair are onto this, and that moves are afoot to rectify the situation. And then thirdly, the right care, right person. This is where the police are restricting their activity, or where they're restricting when they will go into healthcare situations to act, and in particular when they will act as transport for healthcare patients, mainly mental health patients. And traditionally they've been the guys that go into people's houses and pick them up and take them to a mental health assessment point. They're not prepared to do that anymore, and that's getting more and more accentuated, that risk, because the police are rolling out the programme further in February, and it's a particular concern for the mental health service group. This has come up in now 3 committees because everybody's worried about it: mental health legislation committee, quality and safety committee, and this population health committee. I know this because I sit on all 3 of them. And I think we've decided that it should be the Quality and Safety Committee because it's a patient safety issue that looks at this going forward. And there'll be another paper updating us coming to the Quality and Safety Committee in due course. So those are the 3 alerts from the last meeting. The refresh that the chair just referred to, the next meeting will be the last meeting of this committee with the name partnerships in it. We'll be dropping the partnership surveillance, and it will just be a population health committee. Partnerships, the government over partnerships have been looked at by the audit committee, and generally the reports on the activities of the partnerships with us will come directly through to this board. So the refreshed population health committee, there's 3 main things I'll bring to your attention. One is we have the ambition, we will be the conscience of the health board in terms of population health. As the chair said at the beginning of this meeting, we are a population health organisation if we're anything, and this committee will be the conscience, making sure that we really are meeting our objectives in that area. So job partnerships become the conscience of the health board. The other thing is we are looking at the makeup of the committee. In my view, primary care should be represented. It currently isn't. Primary care is at the forefront of the prevention agenda, and they will inform our population health activities better, I think, than anybody else. So we're trying to identify the right person from primary care to come to that committee. So I'll stop there and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Steve. Before bringing Hazel, just to add on the refresh of the committee, the current members of the Population Health and Partnerships Committee, with some additional people, held a workshop in November, facilitated by Jim McManus from Public Health Wales, to really have a look at the role and purpose of the committee. And out of that came the concept of, if you like, standalone population health committee, with partnerships being managed differently because there are so many of them and they operate at different levels. So the proposal, which we'll bring to the March forward for confirmation, as Steve says, a standalone committee with refreshed membership and a wider terms of reference, but also to introduce a formal board, a planning and partnership report from the new director of planning to help with our future focus work, but it will make sure that strategic planning, strategic partnerships are weaved together, and during the course of the 6 meetings of the year, the report to the full board will cover the key partnership agenda. So that's a way of better managing those two parts of the board's responsibility. So Steve, just add to what Steve put there for context for those who are not on the committee. And what we could do is circulate the notes, if we could, of the outcome of that to all board members before March, so that we know that. So, okay, so sorry for that delay. Do come in.
Thank you. Just to pick up the children and young people and the exec lead, there's a summit tomorrow, children and young people summit tomorrow, which I'm chairing, and I know that Gareth previously was the exec lead, so I think that does sit with exec director Nelson, and I'll have a conversation with Liz as part of the transition, and we can and ask Liz just to confirm that.
Thank you.
That helpful, Steve?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We have been in conversation with Water Wales, and we've got the structured assessment coming through, and I think it'll come to the board next time, Hazel. But one of the conversations we've had with them is around where we are in terms of our overarching strategy as an organisation, and the need to refresh and clarify that as we go forward. So there are underpinning strategic plans, and the clinical services plan being one of those. And I'll pick this up when I do my kind of reflection back, but we have a really clear population strategy developed year before last. And I suppose my question was around the language we've used in the feedback around our capability and capacity, and not having enough of it. I don't necessarily see that. What I see is perhaps we haven't focused on it enough. I think we've got people who are very literate in terms of population health and how we need to weave it in. What we need to do is make sure the dial and the lens through which we're looking at many of our other plans is taking a population health approach to this. So we've got the 2 public service boards. There's a really clear overlay with the 2 local authorities in terms of the fundamental determinants of health and how we work together in those things. So for me, it's about how we give attention and focus and move this in as into all parts of our business. And so for me, reorientating the overarching strategy in a strategy that's absolutely about improving the population of the health of the population, even the way around, and that the other strategies then are about how we bring all of that together and knit those pieces together in a clever way. Because if you think about the cluster meeting we had the other day, what we heard is population health writ large in the work that they're doing out in the clusters. That's absolutely what they're doing. And again, just thinking about some of the other things that where we've got great work going on, it is about contributing that, the Tata work, the stuff that we're now doing with Hywel Dda on a regional health economy. I think we've got lots of strands to it. For me, it's about bringing it together and keeping a relentless focus on it from board down, that this is as important as the conversation about high quality ED mental health services, and that's what we've got to do together as a board.
Yep.
Thank you. And just to add to that before I ask
No,
the rest of that, I'd say something before I ask you. Sorry. I've asked Darren to think about for 25-26, can we set out the percentage of spend we already have around prevention and therefore population health? So, we've got primary, secondary and tertiary prevention services. We've got those range of activities that we have underway that Abby's just itemised. Can we define it? And Pat and I were talking about it's difficult to define, but we'll have more spend on prevention than we actually think we do. And so we really need to baseline that, Darren, because that will then help the work of the new committee where we're looking to expand it. Sorry,
I agree with that. I think I've always been concerned that it's some sits with strategy, some sits with public health, and we haven't really got a consistent approach to it across the organisation. So I think putting it together in one way is helpful.
The bit I'm struggling most with, I suppose, is around the sort of economic development agenda, where we play a kind of marginal role at the moment, really. We obviously contribute through PSBs and RPBs, but that there is a whole strands of work through the City Deal and through things like the JCC between the various councils, and we're not really an active player in there. So I think it's about how we pick that up. That bit's always worried me. I think that's an area. Tata we're doing a bit with, but it's in pockets rather than an overall strategy.
And that's when you're handing over to Marie then. So I'm going to move it then, Richard. Marie.
I really welcome what you've just suggested, but I think that for me, it's also about us really understanding our population health needs. I'm not sure we're there yet. I would like that analysis alongside the spend. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, thank you, Muriel. I agree with that. We've got a very good population needs assessment that was done under the auspices of ARCH, so it covers HALVAR and our populations. For me, there's one thing about describing that, so we know about deprivation. For me, it's then about translating it into what need does that generate, and what demand does that need result in? Because I can't help feeling that the sorts of things they were describing about ED, yes, it's to do with an ageing population, but it's to do with deprivation of our population. There will be, and the graph that shows our ED attendance, I think I've said this before, is a direct line correlation with our deprivation. And one of the things that we've agreed to do as an exec team, and I've got the ball rolling and getting the conversation going, is to work with public health to get under that level of conversation. So at cluster level, or even lower, if that's the right denominator, how is the deprivation and the health activity, which is getting worse, not better, is driving the demand into the system, so that we can think about where would we need to target. And we've had conversations about, we'll have people sitting on an outpatient clinic for their respiratory, their heart, their cancer, their musculoskeletal, and we're not making it easy for them to navigate. So we've talked about, in particular communities, do we have a very different approach to how you might do outpatient, where you do multi-clinics, and you do them out in the community and you do them very different kind of ways. So I'm interested in exploring some of those and having the university as a partner about evaluating those things. We might try something and they might not work at all, but I'd rather us be trying something a bit different and novel, to try and get to some of this stuff in a really timely way.
Thank you, Abby. You've anticipated where I was going to go. I think I really look forward to that views, and I think it's enough thinking. I think that's why it's right for population health to take that mindset approach and to query what our thinking is in relation to the very practical bits that we do in this organisation.
Thank you. I don't want to finish this item without looking at right care, right person, because I mean, as Emma, which was here earlier, said, this is, you know, people with mental health issues pitching up at duties. It is causing major concerns, both for the patients and the staff. Now, where are we with these conversations with South Wales Police on this? Because this is, I had a conversation with the Police and Crime Commissioner who told me that South Wales Police were not aware of our concerns. So we do need to get our concerns onto the table formally, so that we can actually, you know, make sure they know. Whether they take any notice, obviously they're not for them, and we're trying to influence, but have we documented formally all the concerns we have and submitted them?
Yeah, it was being led through the joint PSB, so and I think there just hasn't been a meeting. I think that's been the problem. So it was picked up through that as a discussion point, and I know Rob Stewart was particularly exercised about it, as was Steve. So there was quite a lot of debate, but that would have been a sort of May and June time last year. So and we've certainly raised concerns. We've been involved in all of the subgroups everywhere we've been raising concerns, because the same thing happens in England, and it had significant impact on A&E departments, on mental health services. So so it's been raised very formally with the previous chief police commissioner, and the current one.
Yeah, and we did touch upon it briefly on Monday, and Deb fed back that Dermot has been pursuing those conflicts, because Dermot has been, I know it's not all about mental health, but has been leading that. And I've agreed, Jan, that I want to make sure that I'm having the conversation with the right individuals so we can share those concerns. And I think you're right, there'll be concerns in the community too, in terms of response to issues in people's homes that won't touch us, but will be impacting on local authority, particularly around the social care dimension. So I'm happy to follow that conversation up. And I guess what we need to, I do understand their drivers in terms of their stretched resources, and some of these cases can take an awful lot of resource. But it's about making sure that collectively we've got a responsibility for keeping our population safe. And we need to make sure that we're not letting anybody fall through those gaps. So the process of us recording and understanding is really critical. So as we move towards that, making sure that we can pick those things up and have a conversation about what impact is or isn't happening, and making sure that we have got the channels of action, if there is a situation that occurs where we're not getting the police response, and how we would escalate that. So I'm happy to take up that conversation either with Jeremy directly or with our local ECU commander. Thank you, Abby. Helen, did you want to come in there?
Only about the patient's safety, and basically sometimes it's not appropriate for them to be in the back of a police car. Sometimes it is, and it's just to have that measure, really.
Thank you, Steve. Oh, Jean, if you want to come in
as well.
Yeah, I was going back to the broader point around population health, and I'll do so very, very quickly. I think just picking up on what Abby and you were saying around the analysis of the problem, I guess, and the disadvantages and the need for the preventative agenda. I think there's an opportunity for us to articulate that very, very quickly. We have the foundation for that, which is the population health strategy, and further analysis as well. I think the next steps is to translate things into practical interventions as well. That's where I think there's more that we can do in terms of sharing good practice there. Not just in terms of, I guess, the wider population, but also in terms of staff and getting best practice, sort of travelling across service groups, across different areas of activity, because there are some very practical things that we can do that would have a very quick and immediate impact. So I think it's about focusing on both the strategy and the practical application of population health.
And Steve's writing that down, ready for the refresh population health committee. So Jean, please come in.
You already asked the question about the right care, right person, but I'm concerned that we have timeframes that are February and we're already at the end of January.
Yeah.
But my other concern is we reference phase 3 and 4. What's phase 3 and 4? So it's understanding beneath that what that phase 3 and 4 look like. But my other point is, this is a primary example of where we shouldn't forget to use that external lens in our strategy setting. So using data that we can perhaps derive from Public Health Wales that will tell us what the population is going to look like in 10 years, because by the time we've worked through this, we probably will be 5 to 10 years hence. So it's not necessarily focusing on the here and now, but making sure that we're cognizant of how the population is changing in the future.
Thank you, Steve. On the point about right care, right person, we'll send a briefing note out so that everybody understands what this is all about, all the different phases, and then Abby will bring back the actions and the conversation we expect, if that's okay. And Matt, I'm sure that the committee will be looking very closely on what data sources we have, how do we find and dictate them as we move through. Matt.
Yeah, and just to give some assurance, the work is already commencing as well in looking at that, and myself and Jennifer, before she left, were very much leading on that initial piece of work to assess early wins with what the data versus was harder to get hold of data sets that are external to us, but what our plan is to do that. We intend putting a population health digital intelligence lead in place. We actually went out to advert, tracked what the 2 first time round, and Jennifer's obviously left. So as soon as we get the interim person in post, I'll be working with them to see if we can secure that role.
Thank you. Okay, great. So we'll move then on to part 4. And what I suggest we do now before we do drill is we'll take 4-1 from Pat, and then we'll take 4-2 from Darren, and then we'll break it. Okay, so Pat, over to you, please.
Thanks.
So the papers in the pack are for November and December meetings. We also had a meeting Tuesday this week. So I was just going to cover off some of the alerts that the committee would raise with board from the last 3 months, really. I mean, obviously, the first one is the Health Board's overall financial position. Currently, the committee has a limited assurance on the delivery of the 43.7 million target for 24-25. Whilst confidence in relation to the release of the 25 million non-recurrent opportunities is moderate to good, confidence in relation to recurrent savings, in particular 5.2 million in variable pay and 3 million of red category savings, is currently still low. There's also concern that the Q4 savings in 24-25 are again heavily dependent on non-recurrent opportunities. It is a concern that green and amber savings are short of the 59.2 million target by 10.9 million in the current year, but by 23.4 million in 25-26. So that does mean that a significant run rate pressures evident across the service groups are going to be carried forward into 25-26. You know, we really welcome the significantly increased level of senior exec scrutiny on agency spend and on recruitment via the RSB. And we're waiting with bated breath to see really how this is going to impact from January to March financial results. Successful expenditure reduction in variable pay would have a major impact in 25-26 of circa around 20 million. And we also take assurance that the level of scrutiny is going to be maintained as we move into the early part of 25-26, which hasn't been the case in previous years. And I think that gives us a high level of assurance. In terms of performance, and some of these are repeats of earlier conversations, the committee is very concerned about urgent and emergency care. Performance has continued to deteriorate in December. We recognise that the Health Board focus on this area of work, very intense work going on, including through 2 UEC summits to date, with further intensive work planned. Of particular conversation and concern in committee is delayed pathways of care, with its wide-ranging impacts on those patients, but on performance and finances. There has been a lot of work to improve our own discharge planning procedures to date to ensure they're robust, but there's still an awful lot of work to do to ensure that approach is fully embedded across all sites and that compliance with those policies and procedures is high. We also work and recognise the work that has been done with local authority partners and including through the West Glamorgan RPB to remove key barriers to timely discharge. Including things like, timely social work assessments, home care packages, nursing home space or home adaptations. A lot of work being done, and I know there's further work planned with partners shortly. Those system flow issues, as Abby mentioned earlier, also have a knock-on effect in relation to retaining the right level, the agreed level of ring-fence beds for both stroke and neck of femur. Direct admission to stroke unit within 4 hours and neck of femur prompt surgery. Those statistics remain poor. There's been no real improvement over the last 12 months, really down to those system flow issues. Another couple of things then, theatre performance has been a concern, particularly cancellation of surgery at short notice. There are significant staff shortages there. The main reasons for cancellations being there's no surgeon, no anaesthetist or no theatre staff. The service also has had very high levels of variable pay as it tries to cover staff vacancies. So that again, that's been referred to workforce and OD, and there is a lot of work ongoing to review that workforce with the aim of recruiting more substantive posts and a range of measures put in place to address relatively high staff sickness levels in that area as well. So we're waiting to see the impact of those once those are embedded. And again, we reflect on Steve's point about that preventative population health agenda and the lack of funding. We're kind of waiting for Welsh Government confirmation of funding for things like weight and smoking cessation but also the lack of health board funding due to kind of financial challenges has also been raised. I think those, I'm looking at other members now, those are the main points I think we've raised over the last 3 meetings. I don't know if there's anybody else wants to.
Any other members of the committee want to comment? Rena?
To add that at the end about the neurodevelopment service.
Yeah.
Do you want to mention that?
Yeah, we there's the ongoing very low levels of assessments being done within the 26 weeks. There's a massive backlog there. I think it was about 26%, wasn't it? Consistently, you know, it's quite low percentage. There has been some non-recurrent funding now for the final quarter of the year, and they're going to use that to outsource and address some of that backlog. So that will give, you know, give some reprieve in that sense. But there's obviously long-term issues there as well.
Thank you. So what I plan to do now before lunch is if we take the monthly finance report, taking us all the financial dimension part, then delayed pathways and care specifically, and then we'll break for lunch. And then when we pick up the wines and performance reporting, we'll pick up theatres, neurodevelopment services, the other aspects of your performance elements of the committee. Is that okay? So, fine.
I was going to make a serious point. I'll come back if we can.
Yeah.
Okay, so the usual finance report is before committee members with its normal structure and analysis. I'll update on the month's 9 position and progress in delivering the year-end targets in direct response to the analysis that Patty has given us. And there are other matters on the report regarding to working balances and capital, which are there for further information. But just before I get into the numbers for this year, just to assure board members that detailed work is underway on next year and future years. Picking up again, Pat's prompts around recovery, etc. An initial briefing on next year in terms of the breadth of assessment was given to executive directors on Monday of this week, and the Performance Affairs Committee in committee session was also briefed on that this week, and delighted you were able to join us for that, Chair, just to be able to see how that's shaping up. We need to move swiftly through that over the coming weeks to get to a good position for the board in future months. So I didn't want to lose that in the spirit of the update. So page 3 and the charts on page 6 of the report before you show the health board reported a 1.5 million deficit in December, which takes the deficit in the year to date to 47.5 million. The drivers of the position are set out across pages 7 and 8, and we give you the drivers in month and the drivers year to date. And there hasn't been a significant change in the nature of those drivers through the course of the year, in the sense that pay bill driven by variable pay is at variance with budget. We have surge capacity open, and again, related to comments from colleagues earlier, not just in the ED, but across our clinical services. I'm sure we can do better there. Clinical consumables in terms of our ambition to treat more patients is also driving a variance, and continuing healthcare. And we have active engagement and activities across all of those. So in terms of summary, the health board is £3.8 million above its forecast for the year end, 43.7. Board members will remember that was reduced from 50.1 following the allocation of 6.4 million to the health board from Welsh Government. Not new money, but money in government and given to all health boards on a fair share basis. And in order to deliver that and spend, the special board in December advised that there was a gap of 14.3 million from our planned assessment at that stage through to the control total. And the table and the construct of that plan is there for board members on page 4. We've established the Recovery and Sustainability Board. That has met 6 times already. Chaired by those, Abby and Richard chaired the person, so thank you for your leadership there. The last meeting being on the 26th of January. And on the 26th of January, we received updates that showed that the 14.3 million gap, 4 other adjustments had reduced to 10.7 million. With a factor of increased savings, some of which are recovered, not all, during the year, and others are related to expenditure reduction. And that is the rhythm of what the Recovery and Sustainability Board does. It looks at savings in its first meeting in the month, and looks at savings related to spend in the second part of the month, which allows us to recalibrate that gap. Against that 10.7 million gap, there is £7.8 million worth of non-recurrent finance opportunities. And then we're still working through the variable pay elements that we've discussed and Pat's introduced, and I'll come on to that in a moment, and potentially some benefits from some work around continuing healthcare towards the end of Q4. So we're still pressing through each of the key components of the plan as signed off by the board in December. The gap is closing, We are starting to see some green shoots in some of the other areas, which I'll mention now. So from a variable pay perspective, we've introduced quite strong controls around vacancies, around agency. I'm very grateful to my clinical colleagues and workforce leaders for helping us with that. There is a safety net here, Chair, so whilst we are bearing down on this, there's an opportunity every Tuesday morning for areas describing pressure to come to a group of executives to describe what's happening and help to solve some of the problems there, which is really welcome and a really rich conversation. But on a daily basis, as executive scrutiny on agency requests are taken through, reliant on the fact that those governance systems are in the service groups as well, and we only see exceptions rather than the team, which seems to be. In terms of outputs of that, compared to the average of the first 2 weeks of December with the first 3 weeks of January, and last week, compared to those first 2 weeks in December, we've seen a 55% reduction in registered agency nursing, which is welcome as long as the mitigations are in place. And I'm caveating that with the conversation we had with the folks earlier. And we've just started to see a reduction in banker costs as well. What we're trying to do here is not ban cost for the sake of it, but look for creative solutions for sustainable workforce models for the future. And that's the nature of the conversations that happen on the Tuesday morning. And there are many good versions of that. So I'm content that there's a good process in place on a daily basis. The month 10 position will be reported on Friday, the 7th of February. And what I will be able to do at that point, as long as this shape and the percentage benefits realization comes through, hopefully then report the fact that that's hit the ledger, and then I can give a different level of confidence to board and committee members around a trajectory of 43.7, which is a consistent message we've given. But it's the first time I've seen the three indicators start developing in that way. I'd also like to assure members that the work coming from the National Value and Sustainability Board is anchored in our current work and our future work as well, which is really important. It does give opportunity at a national footprint that we want to see. So to re-emphasise the points made by Pat, recurrent run rate reduction in Q4 is fundamental to our success next year. There's a huge challenge next year, which is a briefing I'll bring in the future. But in terms of what we can do in Q4, it will have a significant bearing on next year. Because £1 million better in March is 12 million next year. And we just have to capture that in that sense going forward. So the capital and working balances are in the paper. Whilst government colleagues are working through the cash allocations, we believe we will get that. So there will be I know Steve's got this countdown that when we run out of cash, to pay bills, we are managing that, and that's good. I've had the full allocation for the wage award confirmed from Welsh Government, which is a risk we were carrying previously. So we're good this year, that'll set us up currently. And then we'll just keep bearing down on the work being done by recovery and sustainability in year and for future. Moving probably through the R bit of recovery and sustainability into the S bit. We need them to start to design those sustainable service models, workforce models, and estate of them. I'll stop there, Chair.
Thank you. And Sarah, if I ask you to just expand on the variable pay dimension of Darren's update before opening it up more widely, which will then start with Jackie.
So, well, of course, Chair, Darren's picked up very helpfully in terms of some of the new initiatives that's helping us better understand to drive particularly different behaviour. I'm going to pick up on the executive agency weekly huddle. It's a multidisciplinary approach. Allows us to work together to collaboratively to look at alternative solutions. And if we think about our future challenges in terms of organisation design, it's the right focus in terms of what is the other solution that we could provide in these circumstances, given our financial envelope, still respecting support and wellbeing for our staff and equally care for our patients. So just to recognise that, equally, Darren and I are also exploring how we might utilise the Recovery and Sustainability Board around the wider workforce effectiveness agenda. We pick up utilisation, picking up on some of the examples you picked up, for example, Pat, around theatres, sickness, availability, effective rostering, that whole piece, driving down sickness. Why? Because we want our staff well in work. So we're going to explore how we can work with the service groups more proactively around effective performance management and thought that as a collective and as opposed to looking at it in isolation. It's good progress. We still have much to do. And I think the key to this is our behaviour.
Yeah. I've got Jackie, then Lulia. Jackie, please come in.
It connects a little bit with some of the feedback Sarah's just given, actually. I'm interested in the controls that we put in terms of one bank in the agency and the vacancy controls. I just want to know, are we satisfied that those control measures aren't having an adverse impact on our workforce, and how are we getting that assurance?
you. Let me just see what Yuri wants to ask as well before we come back to you, Sarah.
I think Jackie's point is really important. From an audit perspective, can I ask you a very quick question, which is in relation to, it's really good to see that we've got savings plan in place for 25 and 26. Can I, on that note, get assurances that the process of getting the services to sign their accountability letters is in hand, and that we expect all services to have signed their letters as soon as possible?
So that'll be for Darren. We'll come back to that in a minute. But Sarah, can you respond to Jackie's?
Yes, certainly. So there are comprehensive risk assessments in place. So in terms of the bank agency sign off, daily exec-led sign off now around that with comprehensive risk assessment. Equally, the weekly agency exec huddle, which allows us to take themes in terms of that. What are we worried about? What are we concerned about? Where do we need to give flex in the system? Where do we need to agree a plan over a timescale in terms of reduction? With the ideal being reducing agency is good for patient care because we have stable teams working in the right way together. In terms of control and vacancy control, again, similar risk assessment approaches. From a clinical vacancy perspective, there's now a weekly exec-led meeting reviewing that. And we have a quality impact assessment approach for our admin and clerical roles, because they equally may impact indirectly, which had been standing, and we've now moved to a quality impact assessment process that's allowed us to take the learning and agree in a much more effective way rather than requiring a meeting. So hopefully that provides some assurance.
Thank you, Sarah. And Darren, would you like to come back and respond on Yuri's point?
Yeah, if I may, Chair, this is a proceeding bit really, which is we're currently working through what the budget setting methodology is ahead of the accountability letters going out. We've had really helpful and clear steers and challenge from the Performance and Finance Committee about do we get the budgets right for a service groups to manage and any accountability changes in performance management framework. So we're mindful of getting that right. And we're starting to have those discussions with government as well, just to make sure that the methodology that we adopt here aligns with the expectations and some of the design that Howell challenged us with back in the summer, Chair. So we're working through that. Directly to your point, Nuria, and this here now, Sam is developing the accountability letters. We had a joint session with Howell there recently as part of our regional work in finance, and we've started to compare and contrast accountability letters and methodologies and taking the best from both. And the plan is for the Performance and Finance Committee in February to receive a proposed budgetary framework with the accountability letters therein. Subject to that approval, we'll issue those in this financial year for next, which will be ahead of time compared to others.
Does that answer your question, Maria? Yeah. Okay, perhaps you can pick that up with Darren outside the meeting then to follow through. Thank you. Dean, please come in.
From the Performance and Finance Committee perspective, can we be sure that executives know what breakdown looks like between surge beds, sickness, absence, so that we can understand where execs are focusing their attention? They have the analysis to prove where the overspends are happening. And my second point, at my screen is in one of our reports, we alerted the board to Neathport Talbot surgery overspend. And that is because it's based on 2019 to 2020 levels. So, you know what I'm like, where are we going with understanding what the benchmark looks like before we attribute support or financial cost centre monies?
So that was the point I was going to go about theatre. So there's a couple of elements. Do you notice it's helpful because probably in direct response to your point. We're working with the team at the moment to look at the alignment of anesthetic resource, staffing resource and surgeons. And it's helpful because the majority of this now is in one service group, not all of it, because Morriston needs some of that. And there's clearly quite swift financial improvement we can make by organising those in a slightly different way. So that's ongoing. For board members to be aware, at month 9, these Harbour were Singleton, 9 million spent, and 8.2 of that relates to the surgical activities. So there's opportunity around workforce redesign and streamlining theatre productivity and efficiency, which I'm sure will come to that. Then your point about the non-pay budgets being up to date is well made. You consistently challenged us on that. And what I want to do with Deb is work through the demand and capacity models, because we now know what the ministerial targets are for next year. And that'll shape the level of volume we need to take. So I can have a proper conversation about what resourcing non-pay looks like. The question as to how is a secondary one then, because at the moment, I shouldn't be giving out more money than I get, and actually to get that right, we need to do that, which is why we're revisiting the budgetary framework. And your point then about surge, sickness and variable pay, the methodology Sarah's just described under recovery and sustainability that we're going to take forward, we'll start to triangulate some of those things. You can exacerbate a problem by seemingly trying to do the right thing. And that's where the risk assessment bit will pick it up, and that's where some of that will to RS will locate that.
Just to add briefly, Jean, as you know, we have a line dashboard in terms of our workforce, which is accessible for all. So sickness data, connection reviews, PADR compliance, etc., is live and available to everyone across the organisation.
Karen, could I just ask on, the budget setting methodology and advice to the Cabinet Secretary on when the organisation will return to balance? And really, the Cabinet Secretary is looking to see ways in which 25, 26, 26, 27, 27, we will be back in balance. So how is that going to be actually worked through as part of your budget setting methodology, accepting, and I've raised this with the Cabinet Secretary, we're going to have to put some kind of hybrid response in through an accountable officer letter. We can't hit balance in 25, 26. But neither can we work on an annual plan because we have to set it within the 25, 28 IMTP context to be able to show how we return to balance. And we're also going to come back to this, both in the board development session in February, then obviously the board in March. But can you talk us through that in a little more detail, Darren?
Yeah, it's a good project. It's incredibly challenging to do. What we know is that we know the allocation for next financial year. That's already set out. It's 1.77%, and unfortunately, there's been a good settlement that we'll get the wage award funded, and we know that some of the national insurance uplift to employers will come through the route. But we know that our cost assessment for next year against that allocation is substantially above that. So we need to look at that through a number of different lenses. We need to look at that through traditional cost improvement methodology, which should be routine business for us. We need to look at that through efficiency and productivity and stopping some of the high-end costs going on because we're doing lots of the work in core. And we need to start to look at things like clinical variation and allocation of resource share. I think what we'll see through the 3-year period is a move from the CIP bit, which we have to do as a foundation, into some of those other areas that help.
Yes, thank you. And part of performance and finance can obviously follow through on that as we put in that methodology together. Understand it's a 25, 28 trajectory. Is that okay? Are there any questions, any further comments? So I'm taking it from this discussion, we aren't able to change our level of confidence or, sorry, Rena, did you want to come in?
No.
Okay. So we aren't able to change our level of confidence or reduce any of the risks that we have highlighted in Darren's paper. This is where we are. And that continues to be the level of confidence that I relate with. And clearly we know that PNF is obviously meeting fortnightly, informally, then formally to keep us close an eye as we possibly can on how things are going. But the 7th of February, month 10, will be a really serious indicator for us. Abby.
Yeah, thank you. Clearly this is a difficult arena in which we're taking forward this programme of work. It's really important that we maintain the foot to the gas on it in terms of the actions that we're taking. I know it's difficult. I mean, I know in some areas we thought we have absolutely got to get the balance right between safe services and keeping our staff safe. We will be asked the question. We've got targeted intervention after the board today. So this is the quarterly meeting of the targeted intervention approach where we'll be sitting down in front of Judith. So we will be asked around our line of sight to the end of this year and begin to explore next year in terms of that conversation, which I think is really important. But one of the questions we'll also be asked about is board oversight. And I know that we can say very confidently the board has very good oversight of this through the mechanisms we got in place, and we'll be feeding that back this afternoon as well. Thank you, Jan.
And I have assured the Cabinet Secretary that from my perspective as the chair, independent members could not provide any more oversight in any greater depth, breadth, focus you are covering, particularly through Performance and Finance Committee, and Pat has ever we extend our grateful thanks to you and members of the committee for the robust approach that you have on that. So thank you. So we've been considering where we are, our current financial performance, revenue and capital wise. And I think we can take assurance that we are doing everything that we possibly can do at this point, and particularly through the recovery and sustainability board. Balance sheet will be helping us obviously as best we can, so we can consider that. We're looking at our cash forecast position. And is there a date yet for the strategic financial assistance letter or not?
So we've sent ours in with the
We've sent
request.
it.
That went pre-Christmas. We're waiting. It's being analysed along with others to government.
Thank you. And also, if we can remit to Performance and Finance Committee, then again, this whole issue of the methodology for return to balance over a 3-year period. Thank you very much. So let's just take one vote and then before lunch, because this is a specific issue again that I have to report back to the Cabinet Secretaries on, and particularly in the context of the 50-day challenge and its impact negatively or positively on our numbers of people waiting for delayed pathways of care. So can we take this particular item before we break for lunch? So we'll take us through that. Is that? You haven't got it. So anyway, in terms of the particular issues that the Cabinet Secretary has raised, clearly we sent out some resource and also issued a challenge middle of November 2020. Reduce the number of people whose pathways care are delayed. He did ask me what I could tell him around improved performance. I had to indicate that I wasn't able to tell him that our performance was improved because we have more people whose pathways are delayed now than when we issued the challenge in November. Swansea Council have problems with social capacity and accessing that. Newport Talbot has issues with being able to access domiciliary care worker and domiciliary care packages. And there are real constraints on the way we can use the Regional Integration Fund. That can mean we may be sending some money back at the end of March. We can't use it because of the constraints on it. So as a consequence of that, and the Care Action Committee at the beginning of this week, when the West Glamorgan Regional Partnership Board was at the bottom of the 7 RPBs in terms of delivery against the 50-day challenge, I have to supply you with another update on where are we and what more can we be doing. And obviously links to our earlier conversation around ED, because this is all about, flow, but it's prevention of admission as well as flow through and out the other end. So those are the issues that I need to go back to the Cabinet Secretary on. And Andrew, is it good that you're with us today from Newport Talbot perspective, so we can have a rounded discussion? So Abby, shall I hand over to you?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Jan, you're absolutely right. The information that we had back out to us from the Care Action Committee did put us at the top of the leaderboard in terms of the number of days in which patients are delayed. Now, one of the things we absolutely have to get right is the system by which we are judging and identifying those patients. And I think my understanding is that we have still got some problems because I'm asking for the list of names on who is going on and who is coming off every week. And I'm not getting that yet because I think we've got some challenges about making sure that we're pulling all of that system together. I think it's too paper-based and we're reliant on too many people going around and kind of cross-checking bits and pieces. Now, there is a plug-in because I do see the daily dashboard that has got all of that information in there, but I think it's triangulating it with all the partners. And I think it's the point at which that data kind of straddles across into partner organisations, which I know Matt will say is the reason that we need to have the integrated systems across health and social care. So there's a job to do in terms of being really clear about how we're counting this activity. That doesn't change the fact that we still got far too many patients in the wrong bit of our system going forward. So my understanding is that our latest data looks like it's going up again. So we'll be even further outlier in terms of the position across Wales. I know that colleagues from Andrew's team and Amy's team in Swansea, while David's still off, I think, are meeting every week to go through the cases and to look at expediting the cases. We've had some additional funding from the Six Goals programme that enables us to continue and expand the involvement of a woman called Claire Old, is it Craig? So Claire is has done a lot of work on discharge to assess pathways, both in Wales and in the UK. She's one of the kind of experts around this. We've been lucky that she's been working with us for some time, but we're going to increase her focus very specifically on how we get traction around these cases. For my mind, we need to really look at all of the stages across the pathway, because some of the time allocated to get certain tasks done seem to me to be really long. So if we're waiting for assessments, we know that beyond 10 days we start seeing deconditioning. If the target for doing an assessment is 2 weeks, then we're already into that territory before we've even had the assessment done. So for me, it's about how we fast track assessments, how we use the discipline of starting the discharge process when somebody first arrives in hospital. We may not know absolutely everything we need, but we generally have a good sense about whether this is like someone going back home or whether they're going to likely to require some support going forward. And for me, starting that conversation really early as part of that pathway. As I mentioned before, we've got the 7th of February as the next summit, and we're very specifically focusing on this particular issue before we've taken some kind of other system-wide approaches, but we will focus the 7th of February summit on this particular piece. It's late going out in terms of a notification because we've only just been able to firm up the date. So I've written personally to colleagues to ask that they could free up the time to come. So local authority, third sector partners being part of that conversation, and WAST, because of this issue about who they're bringing to the front door, as well as making sure we don't bring people into the wrong place. So Dan, we are giving it a focus and attention, and we will make sure you have a briefing to go back to the Cabinet Secretary from across the partnership. I have to say that I'm 3 months in and I haven't been to an RPB meeting, so I don't know what the frequency is, but it feels like it needs to be more frequent with a bit more of a sharper focus on this from my perspective. That would be really helpful.
There is one on the 11th of February.
So I'm on leave, so that's probably why it's not on my radar. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or suggestions around this agenda, really? Rena?
I just wanted to ask Abby and perhaps Andrew, what kind of conversations have been had with the care sector? Because when you consider the numbers of those out there, their approach to whether a patient should go in or not, or should be taken, conveyed by an ambulance, or whether they should say, it does come down sometimes to how the individual care home is staffed and what their approach to this is. And I feel that that link sometimes has broken down in the past anyway, in terms of that conversation on who should be put in and how somebody who's fallen should be dealt with. So are they included in these summits, or how are we conveying the conversation beyond, if you like, health and social care and ambulance to the private sector?
They're not, I don't think they're invited, Richard, to this next one, but I think we probably need a very specific piece of work with them. I've asked for us to do a review over the last 3 months to look at the cases of patients coming in via ambulance, by practice, by cluster, to understand whether we could have done something different, because some of those patients will be entirely appropriate to come in. So we kind of need the evidence and the data first, but I'm sure that we've had methods and approaches which I assume we were able to do during COVID, where we will have called care homes and engaged them very quickly. Feels to me could probably do the same thing if we're seeing that shift, and we need to do some further support. Craig, we've presumably got a local enhanced scheme through primary care, which is about providing support into nursing homes and residential homes. Again, we just need to check, is that working? Is there a pattern? Is it particular homes? Is it particular clusters? Is it particular practices that are not where we need to be? And standing back from this, the other thing we are using the 50-day challenge money for, I think it's 8 practices have come forward, which is that they're being paid to very proactively assess patients who are at risk. So there's a methodology for identifying those patients. Some of those will be care home patients. So it's early days, and the frustration is it's only money to the end of the financial year. We need these things consolidated. We can't make best use of the money if it comes in very late in small quantities. But actually there'll be some really good learning, hopefully, from that. But has it made any difference? And we can bring that back into the RPB in terms of follow-up.
Two things, really. I suppose just go back to care homes. You know, in terms of the ambulance conveyance, it's getting the assurance as well that WAST and other organisations are aware of what services are available, because I think that's part of the problem in terms of, and I know from a recent workshop that Andrew and I attended, that we're, even from a professional perspective, that we're aware of all of the services that actually exist. So I think we're still lacking in that, in terms of having that real single point of access and being able to sign for those people. So, you know, it's difficult to negotiate your way through the system, so more work to be done in that respect. I just wanted to touch on the scheme that has come through with the GP practices. It's been very prescriptive, and as a consequence of that, the numbers of patients actually that fall into the category that we find is very low. So in terms of the feedback that we give on that, and we've got the opportunity now at the next IPQD meeting on the 18th of February, there's been an ask to feedback on the 50-day challenge. So we'll have that opportunity to, but as you rightly say, Abby, this is something that needs to be in place for the 12 months. There's no point doing this for 4 or 5 months.
Andrew.
Yeah, so I agree with what everyone said. I think you know, this is multifaceted problem. You know, a problem of what comes into your emergency department, as well as what happens while people are in hospital and where they move around within the hospital estate, and then to where they actually then are discharged. We do have summits with our providers, so our residential care providers, and what we're trying to do is encourage them to take more patients from hospitals. We are prepared to put people into residential care homes on temporary basis where that's necessary. What the residential care providers are telling us is that exactly what Craig said, which is they didn't know what to do, so that's why they rang the ambulance, and there was no other opportunity for that. So we're again trying to educate them as far as that's concerned, but I think we need a whole system approach to that. They're also saying that they've been bitten, as they say it, by what they feel are unsafe discharges. So what happens is they think that they are getting a particular profile of person, and somebody, they would say, very different with different needs then turns up and makes it very difficult for them, and they have to then readmit. So those are some of the things that we're getting back from the providers, and some of the things that we are continuing to challenge. I mean, the fact that we are one of the poorer performers across Wales is of concern. I think Abby's absolutely right. There is something about how we collect information. So the information that we've got in the local authorities about the number of people who are waiting to come out for packages of care is not the same number that you've got, and that can't be right. That's a basic issue I would have thought that we can check out. I've asked for lists of health board lists of any person from Eastport Talbot who needs a social work assessment, and that's delayed. I can't be given that either. So it's really difficult. So we get the numbers, but I can't actually see so if I could see what the names were, I could actually do something about that. So that's difficult. We do have escalation processes in place now, which are much more effective than they were before. Whenever I get things escalated to me, I do get involved in that. So processes are getting better. I think the numbers, we do need to resolve that issue, because we need to be working to the same sort of numbers, not exactly the same, but the same sort of numbers, rather than these vast differences. And I think we do need to be clear about what we're reporting to Welsh Government. I don't think we're doing ourselves any favours whatsoever at the moment, when I see how other regions are reporting some of their data. But we can take all that up at the summit, and I'm looking forward to being a part of that.
Thank you, Andrew. Well, we'll bring it to a close there. So clearly, this is a highly charged area of work here, and we have a lot of work to do to actually bring this whole system together to secure the reductions in the numbers of people who are wrongly placed really in our hospitals. So, Pat, if performance and finance, if you can continue with your oversight from our perspective, we're going to see the outcome of the summit. Obviously, it will be picked up at the RPB next week, and Steve will be there on that. And then I suggest we bring a particular section of the performance report coming back in March around the delayed pathways agenda specifically to elevate it a bit. The full board understands what's happening. Is that okay? So at that point, shall we break for a very well-deserved event? Thank you all. It's been a really windy morning, I think, but I hope you will agree we needed to have the BG item run on, just to make sure we have it all right. So Hazel and I have a look at the agenda, you can see what we can do, but we also want to make sure that Denise Schaefer and Ken Sutton answer all the questions and all the issues that you have of them. So don't let them go with thinking, I didn't have time to ask this, because we're going to make sure that we do ask all the questions of them. Okay, so if we come back at 1:15, please. And if Denise and Ken are here, we'll start with that item. Okay, thank you. Right, so welcome back, everyone. Now, we invite Eva Blanco, Billy Shaffer, and Sutton. Diolch am ymuno â ni nawr. So, my very great pleasure to introduce Billy Shaffer and Ken Sutton from the Unified Panel of the Conformity and the Services. Really great that you could join us. Thank you very much. And we know that you've been with Welsh Government on this morning on the same subject. So we've read your presentation, and I won't ask everyone to introduce themselves now. But I will ask them when they ask a question or make a comment to say who they are, if that is okay. So we're in your hands now. We'll hand over to you. And we have your presentation with you.
So, thank you very much for the invitation. It's really nice.
But we don't have a presentation.
No, we haven't got a presentation.
That's fine.
That's right. I did possibly. So yeah, thank you everybody for inviting us. It's really lovely to be here in Wales and to be able to see people in person. So thank you. Yeah, so I'm Denise Chaffer. I've been chairing now the review since last July. I'm pleased to say we're making considerable progress. Let me just introduce my colleague.
Yes, I'm Ken Sutton, and I've recently joined the review. Just if I could take a moment to introduce myself. My previous involvement with maternity stemmed from my responsibility for the East Kent independent investigation with Bill Kirkman. As I know you know, Chad, before that I worked in the Home Office, and that included the Hillsborough Independent Panel investigation and subsequent work with the relevant authorities on that subject. So my background is in independent investigations, latterly East Kent with maternity. But it's a privilege to be a part of this work and to be here today.
As you've all got the paper, and we'll take the paper as read, I was just going to just pull some key points which I thought you would be interested in. So really positive progress on the review now. I think we're all aware that it's not had the easiest passage of time initially, but we're starting to really make progress now. The review is in 3 parts. So there's a clinical review part, which is reviewing cases over a 3-year period, 2020, 21 and 22. We've got a family engagement part, which Ken is now leading, part of the oversight panel, leading that team. And we've got a governance part of that review, which is the leadership culture, risk management, etc. So the clinical review are halfway through. And they're on track and things are progressing well. They've also been meeting with the neonatal unit here and giving some feedback, and have, that's been going in a very positive way. The engagement work I'll leave Ken to talk about shortly. The governance work is continuing. We've been working on an initial view of the way in which the unit manages risk, and that will be I know discussed by I think it's your Quality and Safety Committee in a bit more depth. Just a couple of things to highlight. We have moved to widen the terms of reference to include the ITU, obstetric ITU admissions. I just want to highlight that's not because we have particular concerns, but it's for completeness. And we feel that we need to speak to those families and just review their cases. And also we're going to be looking at auditing the reviews that have been done around maternal deaths, of which there are a very small number. And we will just be checking around the learning that has emerged from those. So there's been that change. We've been talking a lot about communicating with users of the service, maybe through text or through letters, and you'll see there's a reference to that in the paper. We are being quite closely advised by our family board steering group to not necessarily go down that route. We don't want to cause additional distress to anybody, and we need to handle it in a very careful way. And so we've been exploring other ways in which what we're really trying to do, the purpose of that is see what the organisation's like now. You know, we know there's a huge amount of initiatives that have been put in place. So what is the experience being described, you know, certainly in the last year? And we're working with the Tony Partnership Group, etc., to look at that. And then the final thing really to say is that we are working now to an indicative publication date around the end of June. That has a huge amount of caveats around it at the moment. So part of the clinical review process involves as well the opportunity to feedback to families, and we are unsure yet of the timescales of that. That will require us to be able to bring in our experts around the ITU reviews and get those completed in the time. But we are planning right now, and we will be bringing a plan to the leads within the health board to discuss, you know, your side of that in terms of the processes around accuracy check. We've talked to the Welsh Government about that as well. And as you know, external events can affect publication times as well. And so we are looking at what might possibly, you know, either support or might need us to move those dates. We're quite keen not to go into the middle of the summer because we know that that's a time where there are less kind of people around. And so at the moment, we're just working through that as an indicative timescale, but I'm just giving that with some huge cautions around at the moment. But at the moment, things are progressing well. I don't know if you want to add anything on family engagement.
Yeah, I think we, in my experience of investigations, there's usually a slow and sometimes troubled first phase. And then there is a phase when the review picks up momentum and gets into its stride. And I think that's where we are now, both on the clinical review side of it and in the work alongside to engage with families who use the service. I mentioned that I've been responsible for the East Kent independent investigation. The work that's going on here exceeds the attempts that were made in East Kent to engage with families. I think it's quite important for you to be aware that the ambition here is greater than was deployed there, where only the families who were subject to critical review were spoken to. But here we've now got, if not a perfect model, we've got a good model, which is beginning to tap into the experiences of women. And themes are beginning to emerge, not, I think, for today to anticipate that, but what we are doing from that, I think, is putting ourselves in a position where we can talk about the experience of women with the families, with the service, and not just the clinical outcomes. And that I'd suggest is a plus. The other point I'd want to make is that though I don't think this was explicitly part of our intention, what we are now securing is good connections, in particular with the Muslim community and the Chinese community. And I'm very optimistic that from those connections, we better able to help the board